The moment Lena Hart realized her journal was missing, she knew her life was over. Not because it contained secrets worth selling. Not because anyone would care about the private thoughts of a broke assistant nobody noticed, but because somewhere in those pages she had written things about Ethan Vale, the billionaire CEO who signed her paychecks, that could destroy what little she had left. And now that journal was sitting on his desk. If you want to see how a single mistake can change everything, stay until the end. Hit like and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights in the executive wing hummed with a frequency that made Lena's headache worse. She stood outside Ethan Vale's office at 7:45 in the morning, hands shaking, stomach twisted into something that felt like barbed wire. Through the frosted glass door, she could see his silhouette, tall, still, probably reading something that would decide someone's future before most people finished their first coffee. She'd been awake since 3 a.m., tearing apart her apartment for the third time, under the couch, behind the radiator. In the broken hamper she kept meaning to replace. The journal wasn't there. It wasn't anywhere. Her phone buzzed, a text from her mother's night nurse. "Rough evening. She's asking for you." Lena closed her eyes. 60-hour weeks, night classes 3 times a week. Her mother's medical bills that kept growing like some kind of invasive plant, choking out everything else. And now this. She'd retraced every step from yesterday. The journal had been in her bag during lunch. She'd sat in the employee break room on the 3rd floor, eating yesterday's rice and writing between bites. Writing about how Ethan Vale walked through the building like he owned the air people breathed. How his daughter's drawing hung in his office, the only soft thing in a room full of steel and glass. How he'd looked at Lena exactly twice in 14 months, both times like she was furniture that had been rearranged without his permission. She'd also written about the merger, the one everyone was celebrating, the one that felt wrong in ways she couldn't articulate but couldn't ignore. And then she'd gotten called to help with the document crisis on 7, and somewhere between the elevator and the copy room, the journal had vanished. This morning, Patricia from executive support had pulled her aside in the lobby. "Mr. Vale wants to see you, 8 a.m. Don't be late." Patricia had looked at her the way people look at accident scenes. Curious, a little excited, definitely not sympathetic. Lena raised her hand to knock. The door opened before her knuckles touched wood. Ethan Vale stood there, and up close, he was exactly what 14 months of peripheral observation had suggested. Tall enough to make her feel small, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than her rent, and wearing an expression that gave away absolutely nothing. His eyes were gray, not blue-gray or green-gray, just gray, like January sky before snow. "Miss Hart." His voice was controlled, measured, the kind of voice that had fired people and closed deals and never wavered. "Come in." The office was bigger than her apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, turning morning traffic into abstract art. His desk was obscenely organized. Laptop, phone, one folder, one pen. And there, next to his keyboard, her journal. The worn leather cover looked alien in this space. Too human, too used. Lena's throat closed. Ethan gestured to a chair. She sat because her knees weren't offering alternatives. He walked around his desk but didn't sit. Instead, he leaned against it, arms crossed, studying her with the kind of focus that probably made board members sweat. "I need to start," he said, with an apology. That wasn't what she'd expected. She'd expected termination, public humiliation, maybe legal action, though she couldn't figure out for what. "I read parts of your journal." He said it like he was reporting quarterly earnings. Factual, unemotional. "It was brought to my office yesterday afternoon by someone who thought I should see what one of my employees was writing about me." The blood drained from Lena's face. "I can explain." "Don't." He held up one hand. "Let me finish." She closed her mouth. Her heart was doing something arrhythmic and painful. "What I did was a violation of your privacy. Inexcusable, regardless of how it arrived on my desk." He paused, and something shifted in his expression. Not quite human, but less robotic. "However, what I read presents a problem." Here it comes, Lena thought. Fired, blacklisted, maybe both. "You've noticed things about the Meridian merger that my own executive team hasn't mentioned. Or won't." He picked up the journal, flipped it open to a page marked with a sticky note. Lena recognized her own handwriting, the entry from 2 weeks ago. Quote, "The numbers look clean, but they feel staged, like someone dressed up a corpse and called it healthy. Who benefits if this goes through? Not us." Lena wanted to disappear, evaporate, cease existing. Ethan closed the journal. "I've had private investigators digging into Meridian for 6 weeks. They found enough irregularities to make me uncomfortable, but not enough to justify killing a deal this size." He looked directly at her. "You spotted it in their quarterly report, from the break room, while eating leftovers." She didn't know what to say. Sorry felt wrong. Thank you felt insane. "I'm not firing you," Ethan said. "I'm asking you a question. If you were in my position, what would you do?" Lena blinked. "I'm an assistant. You're someone who sees things other people miss. Answer the question." The fluorescent hum seemed louder. Outside, the city was waking up, thousands of people moving through their lives without knowing that Lena Hart was sitting in a billionaire's office being asked to solve a problem she had no business touching. She stopped, started again. "I'd look at who's pushing hardest for the merger, not just publicly, behind closed doors, and I'd ask why they need this to happen." Ethan nodded slowly. "You're coming to the board meeting, Thursday, 2 p.m. I'm not... Lena struggled to form words. "Mr. Vale, I can't just walk into a board meeting." "You're not walking in. I'm bringing you in." He moved back around his desk, sat down, and opened his laptop like the conversation was over. "Patricia will coordinate the details. You'll need business attire. If you don't have appropriate clothing, the company will provide it." Lena stood on legs that felt like water. "Why are you doing this?" Ethan looked up. For just a second, something unguarded crossed his face. Exhaustion, maybe. Or recognition. "Because everyone else in this building is either too comfortable or too afraid to tell me the truth." He glanced at the journal. "And because you wrote something else. Page 47. His daughter drew him with a smile. I've never seen him smile. Maybe he saves them for her. Maybe that's the only place he has left that isn't a transaction. Lena's face burned. "You see people, Miss Hart. Not positions, not net worth, people." Ethan's expression reset to neutral. "I need someone who can do that in a room where everyone else stopped years ago. Thursday, 2 p.m. Don't be late." She left his office in a daze, journal tucked under her arm like evidence. Patricia was waiting by the elevators, perfectly styled, perfectly skeptical. "So," Patricia said, "you survived." "I don't understand what just happened." "Join the club." Patricia handed her a folder. "Building access upgrade, meeting schedule, and a voucher for Nordstrom. Apparently you're going shopping on the company dime. Must be nice." The tone was knife-sharp. Lena took the folder without responding. The elevator doors opened. She stepped inside, and as they closed, she caught Patricia pulling out her phone, already texting someone. The next 3 days moved like weather systems, slow, then all at once. Lena used the voucher Tuesday morning before class, feeling like an imposter in a department store where salespeople sized you up by your shoes. She walked out with 2 blazers, 3 blouses, and a pair of pants that actually fit. The total made her physically ill, but the receipt said corporate account, so she tried not to think about it. Her mother noticed the shopping bag. "What's this?" "Work thing." Lena hung the clothes in the tiny closet they shared. "Just a meeting?" Her mother's hands shook as she tried to hold her water glass. Parkinson's had taken so much already. Independence, coordination. Soon it would take more. "You look worried," her mother said. "I'm fine." "Lena." She sat on the edge of the bed. "They're putting me in a board meeting. I don't know why. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, and I'm scared I'm going to mess it up." Her mother set down the glass. "Your father used to say the most dangerous person in any room is the one who has nothing left to lose." She smiled, tired but fierce. "You've been surviving on scraps and willpower for 2 years. These people have no idea what you're capable of." Wednesday night, Lena couldn't sleep. She reviewed everything she'd written about Meridian, the revenue projections that jumped at convenient times, the executive turnover that got buried in footnotes, the pension fund that had been restructured right before the merger announcement. At midnight, she opened her laptop and started digging. Public records, LinkedIn profiles, news archives. By 3 a.m., she had names. By 5 a.m., she had patterns. When her alarm went off at 6:30, she'd been awake for 27 hours. Thursday arrived like a sentencing. Lena put on the new blazer. It fit like armor she didn't know how to wear. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. Same face, same exhaustion, different costume. Her phone buzzed. Ethan. Conference room B, 145. We'll go over the agenda before they arrive. She took the subway to work, surrounded by people who had no idea that her entire life was about to change, or implode, or both. The office building looked different today. Taller, more hostile. Patricia was at her desk, typing with aggressive precision. He's waiting for you. Conference room B was smaller than Ethan's office, but still bigger than anywhere Lena belonged. He was standing by the window, reading something on his phone. He looked up when she entered. Good, you're early. He gestured to the table where a folder waited. Here's what you need to know. 12 board members. 8 of them want this merger because their bonuses depend on it. 3 are undecided. 1 actively opposes it but won't say so publicly. Lena opened the folder. Faces, names, titles that sounded made up. Chief Strategy Officer, Executive Vice President of Corporate Development. Your job, Ethan continued, is not to convince them. It's to ask questions they can't answer cleanly. Make them defend positions they've gotten comfortable assuming no one will challenge. And if they dismiss me, they will. He said it with certainty. You're young, female. You don't have an MBA or a pedigree. They'll try to talk over you, around you, through you. He met her eyes. Don't let them. At 2 p.m., the board members arrived like weather fronts. Expensive suits, firm handshakes, eyes that cataloged Lena and dismissed her in the same glance. Robert Chen, CFO, took the seat across from Ethan. Silver hair, perfect posture, the kind of confidence that came from 30 years of being right. Next to him, Margaret Fisk, General Counsel, arranged her tablet and legal pad with surgical precision. Down the line, David Torres, VP of Operations. Linda Kramer, Chief Marketing Officer. Names and titles Lena had only seen on internal emails. And then Gregory Nash walked in. He was older than the others, 60-something, with the kind of face that had smiled through every corporate disaster and walked away richer. Executive Chairman, the man who'd founded this company with Ethan's father 25 years ago. He looked at Lena like she was a typo. Ethan, Gregory said, sitting at the head of the table opposite Ethan, I wasn't aware we were bringing assistants to board meetings now. Miss Hart is here as a strategic consultant, Ethan said evenly. Robert Chen raised an eyebrow. Strategic consultant. With what credentials? The kind you can't get from Yale. Ethan opened his laptop. Let's begin. The first 30 minutes were theater, PowerPoint slides about synergies and market penetration and projected growth. Lena watched the board members nod along, occasionally asking questions that sounded important but didn't actually challenge anything. Then Ethan turned to her. Miss Hart, you've reviewed the Meridian documentation. Observations? 12 sets of eyes locked onto her. Most were curious. Some were annoyed. Gregory Nash's were cold. Lena opened her notebook. Her hands wanted to shake. She didn't let them. The revenue projections assume 18% growth in a market that's averaged 4% for the last decade, she said. That's aggressive. What's driving the difference? David Torres leaned back. Market expansion, new technologies, standard projections for a company positioned for growth. Which technologies? He blinked. I'm sorry? You said new technologies. Which ones? Because their R&D budget decreased last year, and their patent filings are down 40% from 3 years ago. Silence. Margaret Fisk cleared her throat. Those are cherry-picked data points. They're from Meridian's own SEC filings, Lena interrupted. Page 63 and page 98, respectively. Robert Chen's jaw tightened. Miss Hart, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but financial analysis requires understanding context. Then help me understand the context of their pension fund restructuring. Lena pulled out a printed page. 6 months ago, Meridian moved employee pensions into a separate entity. 3 weeks later, they announced this merger. Why separate the pensions first unless you're planning to leave them behind? The room temperature dropped 10 degrees. That's a standard corporate reorganization, Robert said. but his voice had an edge now. Standard for what? Protecting employees or protecting executives? Gregory Nash set down his pen. Mr. Vale, what exactly is the point of this exercise? Ethan didn't look away from Lena. Continue. She took a breath. Someone benefits from this merger happening quickly. Not us. Not long term. So who? I pulled executive compensation data. If this deal closes, 5 Meridian executives get golden parachutes worth a combined $90 million. Meanwhile, their employees get folded into our structure, and based on the integration plan, we're looking at layoffs within 6 months. Integration always involves restructuring, Linda Kramer said. That's not news. But who chose which positions to cut? Lena looked around the table. Because the list I saw eliminates redundancies in operations and support staff, but keeps double coverage in executive management. We're cutting people who do the work and keeping people who sit in meetings. Robert Chen stood up. This is absurd. We're taking strategic advice from someone who, reads documents in her spare time. Ethan, this is beneath the dignity of this board. Sit down, Robert, Ethan said quietly. I will not sit down. Robert sat, but his face had gone red. Gregory Nash studied Lena with new attention. You make interesting points, Miss Hart. Incomplete, but interesting. However, this deal has been vetted by our entire executive team, our legal department, and our financial advisors. Are you suggesting they're all wrong? I'm suggesting someone isn't telling the whole truth, Lena said, and I think you should ask why. The meeting dissolved into arguments after that, voices overlapping, people defending positions. Ethan mostly watched, occasionally interjecting with questions that made people angrier. At 4:15, Gregory called for a recess. The board members filed out, several of them shooting looks at Lena that ranged from annoyed to hostile. Robert Chen stopped by Ethan's chair. This was a mistake, he said quietly. Bringing her here, making a spectacle. You're undermining your own leadership. Am I? Ethan met his gaze. Or am I asking questions you don't want answered? Robert walked out without responding. Lena stood by the window, trying to process what had just happened. Her heart was still racing. Her hands were finally shaking now that no one was looking. You did well, Ethan said behind her. I made people angry. You made them uncomfortable. There's a difference. He came to stand beside her. They'll push back. Harder than this. Are you prepared for that? I don't know. Honest answer. He almost smiled. Almost. Go home. Get some sleep. Tomorrow will be worse. Lena gathered her notes. At the door, she turned back. Why do you trust me? Ethan looked out at the city. Because you're the first person in 5 years who's asked questions without wanting something in return. She left him standing there, silhouetted against the skyline like a figure in a painting. Distant, alone, unreachable. On the subway home, Lena's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Texts from people she barely knew. Colleagues she'd never spoken to. The grapevine had already spread the news. The assistant who'd crashed a board meeting and challenged the CFO. One text stood out. From Marcus, a senior analyst who'd always been kind to her. Be careful. You just made some powerful enemies. That night, Lena sat with her mother and told her everything. The meeting, the questions, the looks on their faces when she wouldn't back down. Her mother listened, then took her hand. Your father would be proud. I don't know what I'm doing. No one ever does. We just decide what we're willing to fight for. Lena thought about that later, lying awake at 2 a.m. What was she willing to fight for? The job she needed to pay bills? The truth that everyone else seemed content to ignore? Or something bigger that she couldn't quite name yet? Friday morning, she arrived at work to find her desk had been moved, not gone, just relocated from the third-floor assistant pool to a small office on 6. It had a door, a window, her name on a placard that looked temporary. Patricia appeared in the doorway. Congratulations, you've been promoted. To what? Special Projects Coordinator. Patricia's smile was sharp. Effective immediately. Reports directly to Mr. Vale. Lucky you. After Patricia left, Lena sat in her new chair and stared at her new desk and wondered what exactly she'd gotten herself into. Her email pinged. Ethan. Meeting Monday, 9 a.m. We need to dig deeper into Meridian's financials. Bring your questions. Another ping. from an address she didn't recognize. No subject line. She opened it. Stay in your lane or you'll regret it. Lena deleted it, then immediately regretted deleting it, then wondered if she should tell someone, then decided she was probably overreacting. The weekend passed in a blur of research and anxiety. She skipped class Saturday to review more Meridian documents. Sunday, she visited her mother and tried to pretend everything was normal. Monday arrived with rain. Lena got to the office early, her new security clearance getting her past checkpoints that used to be off limits. Ethan's office door was open. He was already there, coffee in hand, looking like he'd been awake for hours. "Good morning." He gestured to the conference table in the corner of his office. "Let's work." They spent 4 hours going through financial records. Ethan asked questions. Lena found answers. Sometimes it worked the other way around. There was a rhythm to it that surprised her. He didn't dismiss her ideas, didn't talk over her, didn't make her feel small for not knowing things. At noon, his assistant brought lunch. Lena realized she'd forgotten to eat breakfast. "Tell me about your father," Ethan said, breaking the comfortable silence. Lena looked up from her notes. "Why?" "You wrote about him. In the journal. He taught you to see patterns." She set down her pen. "He was an accountant, not the exciting kind. Small business, tax returns, boring spreadsheets. But he loved it. Used to say, numbers told stories if you knew how to listen." She smiled despite herself. "He'd bring work home, spread it across the kitchen table, and quiz me. 'Look at this expense report. What's wrong?' I'd be 8 years old trying to find the mistake. 'Did you find them?' 'Usually.' He said I had a gift for seeing what didn't fit." The smile faded. "He died when I was 16. Heart attack. Sudden. One day he was fine, the next he was gone." Ethan nodded slowly. "My father built this company from nothing. Died when I was 24. Left me an empire I wasn't ready to run and a daughter I wasn't ready to raise alone." It was the most personal thing he'd ever said to her. "Your daughter," Lena said carefully. "In the journal, I shouldn't have. You saw what's true. I do save my smiles for her, because she's the only part of my life that isn't a negotiation." He looked at the photo on his desk, the little girl with dark curls and a gap-toothed grin. "Her name is Sophie. She's 6. Loves dinosaurs and hates vegetables. Thinks I work too much, but won't tell me directly because she's already learned to be diplomatic. She sounds amazing. She is." He returned his attention to the documents. "Which is why I need to make sure this company is still here when she's old enough to decide if she wants it." They worked until 6. When Lena finally stood to leave, her back ached and her eyes burned. But they'd found something. A thread. A connection between Meridian's CFO and a shell company registered in Delaware. "This could be nothing," Ethan said. "Or it could be everything," Lena finished. At the elevator, she ran into Robert Chen. He was leaving late too, tie loosened, looking exhausted. "Miss Hart." He didn't smile. "I hear you've been promoted." "Apparently." "Word of advice." "From someone who's been in this business longer than you've been alive." He stepped closer. Not threatening, but not friendly. "Know when you're out of your depth. This company has survived 30 years because people understand their place. You're smart. I'll give you that. But smart isn't enough." The elevator arrived. Lena stepped inside. "Thank you for the advice, Mr. Chen." She held his gaze as the doors closed. "I'll keep it in mind." On the subway home, she thought about what he'd said. Know your place. Stay in your lane. Be smart enough to recognize when you don't belong. She'd heard variations of that her entire life, from teachers who thought she should aim lower, from loan officers who looked at her address and decided she wasn't worth the risk, from her own brain at 3 a.m. when the fear got loud enough to drown out everything else. But her father had taught her something else, that patterns existed for a reason, that numbers didn't lie, even when people did, that the truth had a weight to it, and if you were strong enough to carry it, you had a responsibility to try. Lena pulled out her phone and opened her journal app. She'd started keeping a digital version after the original had been compromised. Safer. More private. She wrote, "Day 5 of whatever this is. Made an enemy today. Maybe several. Don't know if I'm brave or stupid. Probably both. But I'm not backing down. Not yet. Not while there's still more to find. She sent it to herself as a reminder. Then she put her phone away and watched the city blur past the subway windows, wondering how much longer she could keep this up before something broke. The answer came sooner than she expected. Tuesday morning brought fog thick enough to erase the skyline. Lena stood at her new office window, watching the city disappear into gray, and thought about how quickly things could vanish. Visibility, certainty, the illusion of safety. Her phone buzzed. Ethan, conference room, now. She grabbed her laptop and the folder she'd been building on Meridian's shell company connections. The executive floor was quieter than usual, like the building itself was holding its breath. Ethan wasn't alone in the conference room. A man in his 50s sat across from him, lean and weathered, with the kind of eyes that had seen too much to be impressed by anything. He wore jeans and a blazer that had seen better years. "Miss Hart, this is James Porter, private investigator." Ethan gestured to an empty chair. "James? Lena Hart. She's the one who found the Delaware connection." James looked at her with the flat assessment of someone who sized people up for a living. The assistant. "Not anymore," Lena said, sitting down. That earned something that might have been a smile. "Fair enough. Let me show you what I found." He opened his laptop and turned it so they could both see. Bank records, wire transfers, a web of transactions that looked random until James started connecting them. "Your CFO, Robert Chen, has been moving money through 3 different entities for the past 18 months, James said, clicking through documents. Small amounts. Nothing that would trigger automatic flags. But consistent. Every 2 weeks, like clockwork. To where? Lena leaned closer. A consulting firm called Apex Strategic Solutions, which is owned by a holding company, which is owned by another holding company. 3 layers deep, you find Meridian's CFO, Richard Voss. Ethan's expression didn't change, but his fingers tightened on the table edge. Robert's paying Voss directly. Has been for over a year. Started before merger talks even began. James pulled up another file. And Voss is returning the favor. See this? Meridian hired Chen's nephew last year, gave him a VP title and a salary that would make your head spin. Kid's 28, has an art history degree, and somehow he's executive vice president of strategic initiatives. Lena felt something cold settle in her stomach. They're buying each other's support. More than that, they're building a network. James scrolled through more records. I found 6 other executives across both companies with similar arrangements. Money moving in circles. Jobs for relatives. Consulting contracts that don't actually produce anything. How much are we talking about? Ethan asked. Conservatively? 15 million so far, but if this merger goes through, the real payday comes after. Voss gets his golden parachute, Chen gets kickbacks, and everyone in the network gets bonuses structured to look legitimate. Lena's mind raced through the implications. The pension fund restructuring. That wasn't about protecting employees. It was about hiding assets before the merger so they couldn't be touched later. James nodded. You're quick. Yeah, that's exactly what it looks like. They restructured the pensions into a separate entity, then underfunded it. When the merger happens and layoffs start, those pension obligations become someone else's problem. Probably end up in litigation for years while people who worked there for decades get pennies on the dollar. Can we prove all this? Ethan's voice was controlled, but Lena could hear the anger underneath. Some of it. The transactions are real, the connections are documented. But proving intent? That's harder. These guys are smart. They've kept everything just clean enough to claim it's legitimate business. Lena opened her laptop and pulled up the file she'd been working on. What about this? I found purchase orders from Meridian to a supplier called Titanium Logistics. They've been buying equipment for a facility expansion that doesn't exist. I checked the address. It's an empty lot in New Jersey. James took her laptop, scanned the documents. His eyebrows went up. Where did you get this? Public Records, SEC filings, their own website. Lena pulled up another tab. They've spent $40 million on this ghost expansion. The invoices all go through Apex Strategic Solutions for processing. Jesus. James sat back. They're laundering money through fake purchase orders. This isn't just corruption, it's fraud. Ethan stood and walked to the window, hands in his pockets. For a long moment, he just stared out at the fog. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. Robert Chen has been with this company since the beginning. He worked with my father. I trusted him. That's why they picked him, James said, not unkindly. The best con always comes from someone you don't want to suspect. So what do we do? Lena asked. Ethan turned to face them. We need more evidence, enough that when we bring this to the board, they can't dismiss it or bury it. He looked at James. Can you get inside Meridian's systems? Not legally. I'm not asking you to break the law. I'm asking if you know someone who can find information that's technically accessible but well hidden. James smiled. Actually smiled. I know a guy. They spent the next 2 hours building a strategy. James would dig deeper into the financial connections. Lena would analyze Meridian's operational documents for more inconsistencies. Ethan would quietly reach out to the board members he thought might listen. At noon, Ethan's phone rang. He looked at the screen, frowned. I need to take this. He stepped out. Lana was left alone with James, who packed up his laptop with practiced efficiency. Can I ask you something? Lena said. Shoot. How long have you been doing this? 23 years, FBI before that. He zipped his bag. Why? Does it get easier? Knowing people are lying, seeing how deep it goes? James studied her for a moment. You want the honest answer or the comforting one? Honest. No, it doesn't get easier. You just get better at living with it. He stood. But here's what I learned. The people who do this kind of thing, who build these networks and hurt people for profit, they count on everyone else being too tired or too scared to fight back. Most of the time, they're right. But every once in a while, someone like you comes along who doesn't know enough to quit. Is that a compliment? It's a warning. These people will come after you. They'll question your motives, your credentials, your right to even be in the room. And when that doesn't work, they'll go lower. Lena thought about the threatening email. She hadn't told anyone about it yet. James seemed to read her mind. If you're getting threats, document everything. Don't engage, don't delete, just save it all. After he left, Lena sat alone in the conference room and let herself feel the weight of what they'd uncovered. This wasn't just a bad merger anymore. It was systematic theft dressed up in corporate language. And she was right in the middle of it. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You should have stayed invisible. She screenshotted it, saved it, tried to ignore the way her hands shook. Ethan came back 15 minutes later looking like he'd aged a year. That was Gregory Nash he wants to meet, tonight. Just the two of us. He paused. He mentioned you specifically, said we need to talk about your role going forward. That doesn't sound good. It's not. Ethan pulled out his phone, showed her a forwarded email. It was from Robert Chen to the entire executive board. Subject line, concerns regarding recent personnel decisions. Lena read it twice. The language was careful, professional, and absolutely vicious. Chen laid out his concerns about Ethan's judgment, his decision to promote an unqualified assistant, his reliance on outside investigators instead of trusting his own team. He stopped just short of calling for Ethan's removal, but the implication was clear. He's making his move, Lena said, faster than I expected, which means we're close to something he really doesn't want found. Ethan took back his phone. I need you to keep digging, and I need you to be ready for this to get worse before it gets better. That night, Lena worked until her vision blurred. She cross-referenced purchase orders with delivery records, matched invoices to bank transactions, built spreadsheets that mapped out the entire network of fraud. At 11 p.m., she found something that made her stomach drop. One of the shell companies Robert Chen had been funding was called Hart Financial Services. Her last name. It couldn't be coincidence. She dug deeper. Hart Financial Services had been registered 8 years ago. The listed owner was Michael Hart, her father. Lena's hands went numb. This wasn't possible. Her father had been dead for 14 years, and even when he was alive, he'd run a small accounting practice, not some corporate shell company. She ran a search for Michael Hart and the company name, found articles from a decade ago, business registration documents, and then, buried in an archived news site, a headline that stopped her heart. Local accountant under investigation for financial irregularities. The article was from 15 years ago. Her father's name, his photo. Words like fraud and embezzlement and ongoing investigation. Lena read it 3 times, trying to make the words mean something different. They didn't. According to the article, Michael Hart had been under investigation for helping clients hide assets through offshore accounts. The investigation had been dropped after his death. Inconclusive, no charges filed. But the shadow remained, and someone had kept his company registration alive, using it for purposes her father never could have imagined. Or had he? Lena closed her laptop before she threw it across the room. She sat in the dark office, trying to breathe, trying to think. Everything she thought she knew about her father was dissolving into questions she'd never wanted to ask. Her phone rang. Ethan. "I just sent you something," he said without preamble. "Look at it now." She opened her email. A scanned document, old, faded, but readable. A contract between Robert Chen and Michael Hart, dated 16 years ago. "Where did you get this?" Her voice sounded distant. "James found it in archived records. Lena, I'm sorry, but you need to see it." The contract outlined consulting services, financial planning, asset protection strategies. It was vague enough to be meaningless, specific enough to be damning. "My father worked for Chen," Lena said. "It looks that way. And Chen's been using his company as part of this network. That's my guess. I don't know if your father was involved in anything illegal, but Chen clearly kept the infrastructure he built." Lena felt something crack inside her chest. Why wouldn't my mother have told me? Maybe she didn't know. Or maybe she was protecting you. From what? The truth that my father might have been a criminal? Ethan was quiet for a moment. "I can pull you off this investigation. No questions asked. You've already done more than—" "No." Lena surprised herself with how quickly she said it. "No. If my father was part of this, I need to know. And if Chen's been using his name to hide corruption, I want to be the one who stops it." "Are you sure?" She wasn't. But she said, "Yes." After they hung up, Lena sat in the dark and let herself cry. Not for long, just enough to release some of the pressure building behind her ribs. Then she wiped her face, opened her laptop again, and got back to work. If her father had made mistakes, she couldn't fix them. But she could make sure they didn't keep hurting people. The next morning, Lena arrived at work to find her office had been vandalized. Not destroyed, just disturbed. Papers scattered, desk drawers open. Her computer still there, but clearly searched. Security was already investigating when she walked in. The guard, an older man named Tommy, who'd always been kind to her, looked apologetic. "Cameras were down in this section last night. 3-hour window. We're checking badge access, but so far nothing." "What were they looking for?" Lena asked, even though she already knew. "That's what we're trying to figure out." Ethan appeared in her doorway, took one look at the mess, and his expression went cold. "Everyone out." Security left. Ethan closed the door. "Tell me you backed everything up," he said. "Cloud storage, updated every hour." "Good. Pack what you need. You're working from my office until we resolve this." "That's going to make people talk." "They're already talking. At least in my office, I can keep you safe." Working from Ethan's office was strange. He had a second desk set up in the corner, usually unused, with its own monitor and phone line. Lena set up there while he worked at his main desk, and for hours they existed in the same space with surprising ease. Around 3 p.m., his daughter called. Lena couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she watched Ethan's entire demeanor shift. His voice got softer, his shoulders relaxed. He smiled, actually smiled, and for a moment he looked like a different person. "I know, sweetheart. I'm sorry I missed breakfast again." He listened. "Dinosaurs are definitely cooler than sharks. You're absolutely right." More listening. "I promise I'll be home for dinner. Yes, really promise. Love you too." He hung up and caught Lena watching him. "Sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to eavesdrop." "It's fine. She calls every day around this time. Make sure I remember there's a world outside this building." He looked at the photo on his desk. Her mother died when she was 2. Car accident. Sudden, like your father. One day we were a family. The next day I was a single father running a company I barely understood. Lena didn't know what to say to that. "I tell you this," Ethan continued, "because I want you to understand something. The people we're fighting, they don't care about families or legacies or the damage they leave behind. They care about money and power and protecting themselves. Robert Chen worked with my father for 20 years, sat at our dinner table, held my daughter at her christening, and now he's trying to destroy everything my father built." "We'll stop him," Lena said. "Will we?" Because right now, all we have is evidence that makes us look paranoid and a board that's already questioning my judgment. Then we get more evidence, enough that they can't ignore it. Ethan studied her. You really don't quit, do you? I can't afford to. That evening, James called with an update. His contact had found emails. Internal communications between Chen and Voss discussing the merger timeline, the pension restructuring, and specific board members they needed to bring on board. The language was coded, but clear enough. Can we use these in court? Ethan asked, phone on speaker. If we can authenticate them, yeah, but that's the problem. My contact obtained them through methods that wouldn't survive legal scrutiny. So we have proof we can't use. Not in court, but you could use them to pressure Chen. Show him we know what he's doing. See if he'll deal. Ethan shook his head. Chen won't deal. He'll double down. It's what he's always done. Then we need someone on the inside, Lena said. Someone in the network who's scared enough to flip. James made a sound of approval. She's right. Find the weakest link. Apply pressure. See who breaks. After the call ended, they made a list of everyone connected to the scheme. 12 names. Lena studied them, trying to find the vulnerability. Margaret Fisk, she said finally, General Counsel. She's been with the company 15 years, no complaints, solid reputation. But look, she turned her laptop so Ethan could see. Her daughter just started college. Expensive college. And 6 months ago, Margaret got a consulting contract worth $200,000 from one of Chen's shell companies. You think she took the money for her daughter's tuition? I think she made a choice she regrets. And if we approach her right, she might make a different one. Ethan considered this. If we're wrong, she'll go straight to Chen. And if we're right, we get a witness. He looked at her with something that might have been admiration. When did you get so good at this? I'm not. I'm just scared enough to try anything. They decided to approach Margaret the next day. Quietly. Ethan would arrange a private meeting, just the three of them, off company property. That night, Lena went home and found her mother waiting up, worry carved into every line of her face. I got a call today, her mother said, from someone who said they were concerned about you, about the pressure you're under at work. Lena's blood went cold. Who? He didn't give his name, just said you were getting involved in things beyond your understanding, and it would be a shame if something happened to you because of it. Mom, is it true? Are you in danger? Lena sat down beside her. She wanted to lie, to say everything was fine, but her mother deserved better than that. I found something at work, something bad, and the people involved don't want it coming out. She took her mother's shaking hands. I'm being careful. I promise. Your father used to say that too. Her mother's voice broke. Right up until they started investigating him. What do you mean? Her mother looked away. I never told you because I wanted you to remember him the way he was. Kind. Honest. Good. But those last few months he was scared. Someone was pressuring him to do things he didn't want to do. Financial things. He wouldn't tell me details, said it was safer if I didn't know. Chen, Lena said. It was Robert Chen, wasn't it? Her mother nodded slowly. He came to the house once, after your father died. Told me he was sorry for our loss. Asked if your father had left any work files at home. I said no, but I'd already burned them. Your father made me promise to destroy everything if something happened to him. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because you were 16 and you just lost your father, and I couldn't bear to take away the good memories too. Tears ran down her mother's face. I'm sorry. I should have told you when you started working there. I should have warned you. Lena held her mother while she cried, and felt the last pieces of her childhood version of her father crumble away. He hadn't been perfect. He'd made choices, probably bad ones, under pressure she'd never understand, but he'd tried to protect them. Even in death, he'd tried to shield them from whatever he'd gotten tangled up in. And now Chen was using that same leverage, those same tactics, on her. I'm going to finish what Dad couldn't, Lena said quietly. I'm going to stop them. Her mother pulled back, searched her face. Even if it costs you everything? Especially then. The next day, they met Margaret Fisk at a coffee shop 3 blocks from the office. She arrived exactly on time, perfectly composed and clearly suspicious. This is unusual, Margaret said, sitting down with her coffee. Meeting off-site, no agenda. Should I have brought my lawyer? This isn't a legal meeting, Ethan said. It's a conversation, off the record. There's no such thing as off the record when the CEO requests a private meeting with general counsel. Lena decided to try. We know about the consulting contract, the $200,000 from Apex Strategic Solutions. Margaret's face didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. That was legitimate work, regulatory compliance consulting. For a company that doesn't have any regulatory compliance needs. Lena opened her laptop. Apex is a shell company. It exists to move money between people who don't want those transactions examined too closely. That's a serious accusation. It's a serious problem, Ethan said. Margaret, I've known you for 15 years. You're not corrupt, but you made a choice, probably for good reasons, that put you in the middle of something much bigger than you realized. Margaret set down her coffee with careful precision. What exactly are you asking me? We're asking you to tell us what you know, Lena said. About the merger, about Chen and Voss, about who else is involved. And if I don't? Then when this all comes out, and it will come out, you'll go down with everyone else. Ethan's voice was gentle but firm. Or you can help us stop it. We're not trying to destroy anyone. We're trying to save this company. Margaret was quiet for a long time. She looked out the window at people passing by, living normal lives, unaware of the conversation happening in this coffee shop. Finally, she spoke. My daughter got into Princeton. Full ride was off the table because we make just enough to disqualify for financial aid, but not enough to actually afford it. When Chen approached me with the consulting offer, I knew what it really was, but I told myself it was just one contract, one compromise, for her future. What did he ask you to do? Lena asked. Legal opinions? Structured to support the merger. I was supposed to review Meridian's contracts and find no issues, even when there were issues. She looked at them. I wrote 3 separate memos flagging problems. Chen had me rewrite them until the problems disappeared. Do you still have the original versions? Yes. I kept everything, just in case. Margaret's hands trembled slightly. I'm not proud of this. We're not here to judge you, Ethan said. We're here to give you a way out, help us build a case. Testify if it comes to that. In exchange, I'll make sure you're protected. Chen will destroy me. Chen's already destroyed, Lena said. He just doesn't know it yet. The question is whether you want to be standing with him when he falls or standing with us when we pick up the pieces. Margaret closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she looked exhausted but resolved. What do you need? They spent 2 hours in that coffee shop while Margaret outlined everything. The network of executives, the coded language they used in emails, the board members who were actively complicit versus those who were just willfully ignorant. By the end, Lena had filled 12 pages of notes. When they finally left, Margaret stopped at the door. I keep thinking about all the people who'll lose their jobs when this merger goes through. The pensions that'll disappear. I told myself it wasn't my fault, wasn't my responsibility to stop it. But it was. And I didn't. You are now, Ethan said. That counts for something. Back at the office, Lena and Ethan compiled everything they had. The financial records, James's investigation, Margaret's testimony. It was almost enough. Almost. We need to move soon, Ethan said. Chen knows we're digging. The break-in, the threats. He's getting desperate. How desperate? As if in answer, Ethan's phone rang. He looked at the screen and his expression hardened. It's the board chairman, Gregory. He answered on speaker. Gregory. Ethan, we need to talk. Emergency board meeting tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. The subject is your continued leadership of this company. Lena's stomach dropped. On what grounds? Ethan's voice was ice. Erratic decision-making, promoting unqualified personnel to sensitive positions, launching unauthorized investigations into board members. Shall I continue? I'm investigating fraud, Gregory. If the board has a problem with that, the board has a problem with how you're conducting yourself. You've created a hostile environment. Robert has filed a formal complaint. Several others have expressed concerns. This meeting is happening whether you want it or not. Fine, I'll be there. And Ethan, come prepared to defend yourself, or come prepared to step down. The line went dead. Lena felt like the floor had disappeared beneath her. They're forcing you out. They're trying. Ethan stood and walked to the window. Chen made his move. He got to Gregory first, probably showed him select pieces of evidence that make me look paranoid or vindictive. So what do we do? He turned to face her. We go to that meeting with everything we have, all of it, and we force them to choose between protecting Chen or protecting this company. And if they choose Chen, then we both lose our jobs and hope the evidence eventually finds its way to the right authorities. He almost smiled. Not the outcome I was hoping for. Me neither. They worked through the night, building the case they'd present to the board. Every document organized, every connection mapped, every piece of evidence ready to deploy. Lena's eyes burned and her head ached, but she kept going because stopping meant thinking about what would happen if they failed. At 4 a.m., Ethan made coffee. They drank it in silence, watching the city wake up through the windows. "Can I ask you something?" Lena said. "Of course. Why are you risking everything for this? You could walk away, sell the company, spend time with your daughter, live whatever life you want." Ethan was quiet for a moment. "My father built this company because he believed businesses could do good in the world. Not just make money, but actually create value for people. Employees, customers, communities. He was probably naive, but he meant it." He looked at her. "When he died, I inherited that belief along with everything else. I'm not always good at it. I make mistakes. I prioritize wrong. But I can't walk away knowing Chen and people like him are using what my father built to hurt people. Your father would be proud of you. Maybe. Or maybe he'd tell me I'm being stubborn and stupid." He smiled slightly. "Probably both." At 8:30, they gathered their materials and headed to the boardroom. Lena's hands were steady now. Fear had burned through to something else. Determination, maybe. Or just the understanding that there was no going back. The board members were already assembled when they arrived. 12 faces, most of them hostile or carefully neutral. Robert Chen sat next to Gregory Nash, looking confident and calm. Margaret Fisk sat at the far end of the table, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. Gregory called the meeting to order. "We're here to discuss serious concerns that have been raised about Ethan Vale's leadership. Robert, you have the floor." Chen stood. He had a folder in front of him, organized and professional. "Thank you, Gregory. What I'm about to present is difficult for me personally. Ethan and I have worked together for years, but I have a responsibility to this company and its shareholders that supersedes personal relationships." He began laying out his case. Ethan's decision to promote Lena without proper vetting, his hiring of outside investigators to look into board members, his creation of a hostile work environment based on unfounded conspiracy theories. Every point was delivered calmly, backed by carefully selected evidence that made Ethan look either paranoid or unstable. Lena watched the board members' faces. Some were convinced. Others were still deciding. When Chen finished, Gregory turned to Ethan. "Your response?" Ethan stood. "Everything Robert just told you is technically true and completely misleading. Yes, I promoted Miss Hart because she identified fraud that our entire executive team missed or ignored. Yes, I hired investigators because I had evidence of corruption and needed to verify it. And yes, I've created tension because some people in this room are actively stealing from this company." The room erupted, voices overlapping, people demanding proof, Chen calling for order. Gregory slammed his hand on the table. "Enough. Ethan, if you're accusing board members of criminal activity, you better have evidence." "I do." Ethan nodded to Lena. She stood and connected her laptop to the conference room display. Her hands didn't shake. She'd practiced this too many times to mess it up now. The first slide showed the network of shell companies, names, connections, money flows. She walked them through it step by step. Apex Strategic Solutions, the fake purchase orders, the pension restructuring, every piece of the fraud laid out in clear, undeniable detail. "This isn't speculation," Lena said. "These are bank records, SEC filings, contracts signed by people in this room." She pulled up the emails James had found. Coded language made explicit through context. Chen and Voss discussing timeline. Margaret suppressed legal memos. The whole ugly picture. Chen's face had gone red. "Those emails are inadmissible. They were obtained illegally." "We're not in court, Robert. Ethan said. This is a board meeting, and the question isn't whether we can convict you. It's whether you can explain any of this. Gregory stared at the screen. Is this real, Robert? It's taken out of context, misinterpreted. These are standard business arrangements. $200 million in fraudulent transactions is standard business. Lena pulled up another file. Or is it standard to threaten the families of people who ask questions? She displayed the threatening text she'd received, the call to her mother, the break-in at her office. The room had gone completely silent. Margaret Fisk stood up. Her voice shook but held. It's true. All of it. Robert approached me 8 months ago, offered me money in exchange for legal opinions that supported the merger regardless of actual legal risks. I accepted. I was wrong. But I'm not covering for this anymore. Chen turned on her. You have no idea what you've just done. I know exactly what I've done, Margaret said. I've stopped lying. Gregory looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Robert, do you have anything to say? Chen sat very still. His confidence had cracked, but underneath it was something harder, meaner. You want to know what I have to say? Fine. This company was dying when I came here. Your father's naive dreams of doing good were bankrupting us. I saved this company. I made it profitable. Everything I've done has been for our bottom line. You've been stealing, Ethan said. I've been surviving. And yes, I've made sure I'm taken care of in the process. You think that makes me special? Look around this table. Half these people have similar arrangements. We all take care of our own. That's how this world works. Not in my company, Ethan said quietly. Your company. Chen laughed, bitter and sharp. You inherited an empire you didn't earn and barely understand. Your father was a fool, and you're following in his footsteps. The only difference is I won't be here to save you this time. He stood, grabbed his jacket, and walked toward the door. Robert, Gregory said, if you leave this room, it's over. Your career, your reputation, everything. Chen stopped at the door, looked back at the table. My career was over the moment she walked into this boardroom. He glanced at Lena with pure venom. Should have stayed invisible, girl. Would have saved yourself a lot of pain. Then he was gone. The silence he left behind was crushing. Finally, Gregory spoke. We need legal counsel, immediately, and we need to contain this before it becomes public. No, Ethan said. We're not containing anything. We're reporting it. To the SEC, to the authorities, to anyone who needs to know. This company is going to survive this by being honest about what happened, not by hiding it. One of the other board members, David Torres, cleared his throat. That's suicide. The stock will tank. Shareholders will revolt. Maybe. Or maybe they'll see a company that found corruption and dealt with it instead of covering it up. Ethan looked around the table. My father built this company on integrity. Chen tried to turn it into something else. We're taking it back. Everyone who was involved in this scheme has until the end of the day to resign. Everyone else? We have work to do. The meeting broke up in chaos. Some board members left immediately. Others stayed to ask questions, offer support, or try to save themselves. Lena packed up her laptop with hands that had finally started shaking now that it was over. Margaret approached her quietly. Thank you, Margaret said. For what? For giving me a chance to do the right thing, even if it's too late. It's not too late, Lena said. Not yet. Ethan found her an hour later in her office. She was staring at her computer screen without seeing it, processing everything that had just happened. You did it, he said. We did it. No, you did it. You saw what no one else saw. You had the courage to keep pushing when everyone told you to stop. This company owes you more than it can ever repay. Lena felt tears building and blinked them back. What happens now? Now we clean house, rebuild, try to salvage what we can. He paused. And I'd like you to help, not as an assistant, as someone who actually belongs in those rooms. I don't know if I'm ready for that. Neither do I. But I know I trust you. And right now, that's worth more than any credential. Her phone buzzed, a text from her mother. I'm proud of you. Lena looked up at Ethan, this man who'd started as a distant, intimidating figure and had become something else, an ally, maybe even a friend. Okay, she said, Let's rebuild. Outside the window, the fog was finally lifting. The fog had lifted, but the storm was just beginning. By Friday afternoon, 3 more board members had resigned. 2 others were under internal investigation. The legal department was working 18-hour days preparing documentation for the SEC. And Lena's name was everywhere, whispered in hallways, typed in emails, spoken with either admiration or contempt depending on who was talking. She'd become visible in exactly the way she'd always feared. Her new title was Director of Strategic Oversight, which sounded impressive and meant almost nothing because the role was being invented as they went. What it actually meant was that she sat in meetings she had no business attending, asked questions that made people uncomfortable, and tried not to drown in the attention that came with being the assistant who'd exposed a $200 million fraud scheme. The press got hold of the story Tuesday morning. Not the details, just enough to make headlines. Investment firm launches internal investigation into executive corruption. By noon, reporters were camped outside the building. By evening, Lena's LinkedIn had exploded with connection requests from people she'd never met. Don't read the comments, Marcus warned her in the break room. He'd been one of the few people who'd treated her the same before and after. Trust me, nothing good lives in comment sections. But Lena read them anyway. Half called her brave. The other half called her an opportunist, a social climber, someone who'd slept her way into Ethan's good graces. The words stung more than she wanted to admit. She was working late Wednesday, reviewing restructuring proposals, when Patricia knocked on her office door. The executive assistant looked different somehow, less polished, more tired. "Can I come in?" Patricia asked. Lena gestured to the chair. Patricia sat with unusual hesitation. "I owe you an apology," Patricia said. "I've been awful to you since you started. Dismissive, cold. I told myself it was because you didn't belong here, but really it was because I was scared." "Scared of what?" "That someone like you could come in and do in 14 months what I couldn't do in 8 years. See things. Matter." Patricia looked at her hands. "I've been Robert Chen's assistant for most of my career. I knew something was wrong. I saw the emails, the meetings, the things that didn't add up, and I told myself it wasn't my place to ask questions." Lena felt something shift. "Did he ask you to do things? Help with the scheme?" "Nothing illegal, just small things. Schedule meetings off the books. Don't log certain calls." I thought I was being professional, following orders. Patricia's voice cracked. "But I was helping him hide it, and now I have to live with that. Are you telling me this because you want forgiveness, or because you want to help?" Patricia looked up, surprised. "Both, I guess. Is that allowed?" "I don't know. I'm still figuring this out too." Lena pulled out a legal pad. "Tell me everything you remember. Times, dates, who met with who, every small thing that seemed off." They talked for 2 hours. Patricia's memory was sharp, her records meticulous. By the end, Lena had 3 more names and a timeline that filled in gaps James's investigation had missed. "What happens to me now?" Patricia asked as she stood to leave. "That's not my decision, but if you testify honestly, that counts for something." After Patricia left, Lena sat alone in her office and wondered how many other people in this building had seen pieces of the truth and chosen silence. How many had been scared or complicit or just tired of fighting? How many had been like her father, pressured into choices they couldn't undo? Her phone rang. "Ethan. My apartment. Tomorrow night, 7 p.m. His voice was tense. "We need to talk. Not here." "About what?" "I'll explain tomorrow. Just come." He hung up before she could ask more questions. Lena left the office after midnight, exhausted and uneasy. The subway was nearly empty. She sat in the harsh fluorescent light and tried not to think about the threatening emails that had started arriving again. Different accounts, same message, back off or pay the price. She'd forwarded them all to security. James said they were likely from someone connected to Chen, trying to scare her into silence. It was working, but she wasn't about to admit that. Thursday crawled by in a series of tense meetings and whispered conversations. The board had hired an outside firm to conduct a full audit. Employees were being interviewed, people were choosing sides, and the divisions were getting uglier. Lena overheard 2 executives talking in the hallway outside her office. "She got lucky, that's all. Right place, right time. I heard Vale's been grooming her, playing the long game." "For what? She's nobody. No connections, no credentials. 6 months from now, she'll be gone and he'll have moved on to the next one." The words hit harder than they should have. Lena closed her door and tried to focus on work, but doubt had wormed its way under her skin. What if they were right? What if this was temporary, a moment of usefulness before she became irrelevant again? At 6:30, she left for Ethan's apartment. The address he'd given her was in a building she'd passed 100 times without thinking about who lived there. The doorman checked her name against a list and waved her through to elevators that opened directly into individual apartments. The doors slid open into a space that was nothing like she'd expected. Yes, it was expensive. Floor-to-ceiling windows, original hardwood, furniture that probably cost more than her yearly salary. But it was also lived in. Sophie's drawings covered one wall. Toys scattered across the floor. A blanket fort in the corner of the living room. Ethan appeared from the kitchen wearing jeans and a t-shirt. Lena had never seen him in anything but suits. It was disorienting. "She's at her grandmother's tonight," he said, reading her expression. "I thought we could use privacy. This is about more than work, isn't it? Sit down, please." Lena sat on a couch that was more comfortable than it had any right to be. Ethan poured 2 glasses of wine and handed her one before settling into the chair across from her. "I got a call this afternoon," he said, "from someone I trust. Someone with connections to the board members who aren't directly involved in Chen's scheme." He paused. "They're planning to force me out." Lena's stomach dropped. "What? We exposed the fraud. We saved the company. We also made a lot of powerful people very uncomfortable. Some because they were complicit, others because we proved the board wasn't doing its job. Gregory's been taking calls from shareholders. The optics are bad. CEO promotes unknown assistant, launches investigation into his own CFO, company's in chaos. They want stability." "So they're sacrificing you for stability?" "It's more complicated than that. There's a faction that wants me gone regardless. They think I'm too much like my father, too idealistic, too willing to prioritize ethics over profit. Chen was one of them. He's gone, but the others are still there." "When?" "They'll make their move soon, probably next week's board meeting. They'll frame it as stepping aside for the good of the company. Give me a generous exit package and a board seat with no real power." Lena set down her wine. "So we fight them." "With what?" "We used everything we had on Chen. The remaining board members know we don't have evidence against them personally." "Then we find evidence." "Lena." Ethan leaned forward. "I didn't tell you this because I want you to fix it. I told you because you deserve to know what's coming. When I go, they'll dismantle everything we've built. Your position, the reforms, the investigations, it'll all be quietly shelved in the name of moving forward. And you're just going to let them? I'm trying to protect you. If you fight this, they'll destroy you. Not just your career, your reputation, your future, everything. They have resources and connections I can't match." Lena stood up. She was shaking with anger. "So your solution is to quit? Walk away and hope they're merciful?" "My solution is to recognize when I've lost and make sure you don't lose with me." "That's not your choice to make." She grabbed her bag. "I didn't come this far to watch you give up." "Where are you going?" "To find a way to win." She left before he could argue. The elevator ride down felt endless. Outside, the city was alive with people moving through their Thursday night, unaware that Lena Hart was standing on the sidewalk trying to figure out how to fight battles she had no training for. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Parking garage. Level 3. Come alone. Every instinct screamed trap. Lena walked toward the garage anyway. Level 3 was nearly empty. Her footsteps echoed on concrete. She was about to turn back when a figure stepped out from behind a pillar. Linda Kramer, Chief Marketing Officer, one of the board members who'd voted to investigate Chen. "Miss Hart, thank you for coming." "How did you know I'd be here?" "I have people watching Vale's building, not for nefarious reasons," Linda added quickly. "For protection, mine and his." "I don't understand." Linda looked around, making sure they were alone. "I'm one of the board members pushing for Ethan's removal, but not because I want him gone. Because I'm being forced to." "Forced by who?" "Gregory Nash. He's been systematically pressuring everyone who might support Ethan, threatening to expose past mistakes, calling in favors, making it clear that loyalty to Vale means career suicide." Linda's voice was tight. "He came to me 3 days ago, showed me documents related to a campaign I ran 5 years ago, marketing materials that pushed legal boundaries. Nothing criminal, but enough to be embarrassing if made public. So you caved. I have a family, a mortgage, college tuition for 3 kids. I caved. Linda met her eyes. But I'm telling you now because you need to understand what you're really fighting. This isn't about corruption anymore. It's about power. Gregory has been consolidating control for years. Chen was supposed to be his enforcer. Now that Chen's gone, Gregory needs Ethan gone too before someone realizes how much of this company Gregory actually runs. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the only one crazy enough to try stopping him. And because if someone doesn't, this company becomes Gregory's personal empire, and everyone who believed in what Ethan's father built loses. Linda handed Lena a flash drive. Everything I have on Gregory. Financial ties, board manipulation, backdoor deals. It's not enough for criminal charges, but it might be enough to turn public opinion. Or at least enough to make some board members think twice. If I use this, he'll come after you. He's already coming after me. At least this way I'm fighting back. Linda started walking toward the exit. Good luck, Miss Hart. You're going to need it. Lena stood alone in the parking garage, flash drive in hand, and felt the weight of what she'd gotten herself into. This wasn't about fraud anymore. It was about a power struggle at the highest levels of a company worth billions. And she was right in the middle. She went home and spent all night reviewing Linda's files. Gregory Nash's fingerprints were everywhere. Deals structured to benefit him personally. Board positions he'd maneuvered allies into, financial arrangements that skirted ethics rules without quite breaking them. He'd been building his own empire inside Ethan's father's company for decades. At 3 a.m., Lena's mother found her still working at the kitchen table. You should sleep, her mother said. I can't, not yet. Her mother sat down across from her. Your father used to do this, stay up all night with his files, trying to find a way out of whatever Chen had him trapped in. She touched Lena's hand. He never found it. It killed him, I think. The stress, the fear, the impossible choices. I'm not Dad. No, you're stronger, but even strong people break if they carry too much. What am I supposed to do, just give up? Let these people win? I'm saying you need to decide what you're actually fighting for. Is it justice? Revenge? Proving something to yourself? Her mother's eyes were sad and knowing. Because if you don't know why you're fighting, you won't know when to stop. Lena thought about that as dawn broke over the city. What was she fighting for? The truth? The company? Ethan? Or was she fighting because she'd spent her whole life being invisible, and this was finally her chance to matter? She didn't have an answer. Friday morning, she went to work with Linda's flash drive and a plan that was mostly hope and stubbornness. She needed to present this evidence to someone who could use it. Someone with authority and motivation to take on Gregory Nash. The problem was she didn't know who that someone was. She was still working through options when her office door burst open. 2 people she'd never seen before walked in, a man and woman in dark suits with badges clipped to their belts. Lena Hart? The woman said. Yes? I'm Agent Sarah Chen, FBI. This is Agent Mike Torres. We need to ask you some questions about Robert Chen and the Meridian merger fraud. Lena's mouth went dry. Should I have a lawyer? You're not under investigation. We just want information. Agent Chen sat down without being invited. You were instrumental in exposing the fraud. We'd like to understand how you discovered it. They spent 2 hours going over everything. Lena walked them through the journal, the initial suspicions, the investigation, the board meeting. She showed them documents, explained connections, laid out the entire scheme. Agent Torres took notes. This is good work. Better than good. How did you know where to look? My father taught me to see patterns, and I had access to documents most people ignore. Your father, Agent Chen said, pulling out a file. Michael Hart. He was under investigation 15 years ago for financial irregularities. Investigation was dropped after his death. Lena's chest tightened. I know. Did you know he was working with Robert Chen at the time? That Chen was the one who reported him to authorities. The room tilted. What? Agent Chen slid documents across the desk. Investigation reports. Interview transcripts. And there it was. Robert Chen's statement to federal investigators accusing Michael Hart of helping clients evade taxes through illegal offshore accounts. Your father was working for Chen, Agent Chen continued. When he refused to participate in a scheme Chen was running, Chen turned him in for earlier work they'd done together. Classic manipulation. Make someone complicit, then use that compliance as leverage. Lena couldn't breathe. Chen killed my father. Not directly, but the stress of the investigation, the knowledge that he was facing criminal charges that likely contributed to his heart attack. Agent Torres's voice was gentler. We think Chen's been using this playbook for decades. Find talented people, compromise them, control them. When they become liabilities, destroy them. Why are you telling me this? Because we think Gregory Nash is using the same playbook, and we think you're his next target. Agent Chen pulled out more documents. Photos of Lena leaving Ethan's apartment, transcripts of her emails, records of her financial transactions, every penny accounted for. Someone's building a file on you, Agent Chen said. Character assassination material. They're looking for anything they can twist. Your relationship with Ethan Vale, your rapid promotion, your access to confidential documents. They're preparing to destroy your credibility before you can threaten them further. Gregory, Lena said, that's our suspicion, but we can't prove it yet, which is why we need your help. Agent Torres leaned forward. Keep doing what you're doing. Gather evidence, build the case. But now you're doing it knowing we're backing you up. You want me to wear a wire? Nothing that dramatic. Just document everything. If Nash or his people approach you, record it. Legal in this state as long as one party consents. That's you. After they left, Lana sat in her office and tried to process everything. Chen had destroyed her father. Gregory was trying to destroy her. And the FBI was asking her to be their inside source in a case that could take down some of the most powerful people in the financial world. She called Ethan. We need to talk. Now. They met in a conference room neither of them had used before. Lena told him everything. Linda's information, the FBI visit, the files being built against her. This is bigger than we thought, Ethan said when she finished. Gregory's not just trying to take control of the company. He's trying to eliminate anyone who might challenge him. You, me, anyone who knows too much. The FBI can protect you. I don't want protection. I want to stop him. Lena pulled up Linda's files on her laptop. Look at this. Gregory's been siphoning money from company accounts for years. Not huge amounts, nothing that triggers audits, but consistent. He's stolen maybe 20 million over the last decade. Ethan studied the documents. This is enough to force him out. If we present this to the board is terrified of him. Half of them owe him favors. The other half are too scared to act. Lena closed the laptop. We need to go public. Take this to the press, the shareholders, anyone who'll listen. That'll destroy the company's reputation. The company's reputation is already destroyed. We're just deciding whether to control the narrative or let Gregory write it. Ethan stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city moved through another Friday afternoon, people heading home early, starting weekends, living normal lives. If we do this, he said slowly, there's no going back. Gregory will come after both of us with everything he has. He's already coming. At least this way we're fighting back. And if we lose, then we lose knowing we tried. Ethan turned to face her. Something had changed in his expression. Not quite hope, but maybe the memory of what hope felt like. My father used to say the hardest part of running a company isn't making money, it's deciding what you're willing to sacrifice to make it. He almost smiled. I think he'd like you. Would he like what we're about to do? Probably not. He hated publicity, avoided conflict when he could. Ethan pulled out his phone. But he also said that sometimes you have to burn everything down to save what matters. So yes, I think he'd understand. They spent the weekend building their case. Lena worked with James to compile every piece of evidence into a narrative that would make sense to outsiders. Ethan reached out to journalists he trusted, testing the waters. Agent Chen checked in twice to make sure Lena was okay and to remind her to document everything. Sunday night, Lena's mother asked her one more time if she was sure. No, Lena admitted. I'm not sure about anything, but I'm doing it anyway. Then I'm proud of you, terrified, but proud. Monday morning arrived with rain. Lena got to the office early and found a note on her desk. Handwritten, no signature. Conference room B, 8 a.m. Come alone. She checked her phone. Gregory Nash had called a special board meeting for 8:30. This was happening now. Lena grabbed her laptop and recording device the FBI had given her. She was wearing it under her blouse, a tiny microphone that looked like a button. She felt like a character in a bad spy movie. Conference room B was dark when she arrived. She flipped on the lights and found Gregory Nash sitting at the head of the table, looking like he'd been waiting for hours. "Miss Hart, thank you for coming." "Did I have a choice?" "Everyone has choices. The question is whether they choose wisely." Gregory gestured to a chair. "Sit. Let's talk about your future." Lena sat but kept her distance. Her heart was hammering so hard she was sure the microphone would pick it up. "You've made quite a name for yourself," Gregory continued. "Exposed corruption, saved the company, became Ethan's trusted advisor. Impressive for someone who started as an assistant. Is there a point to this? The point is that you've gone as far as you can go. Further, actually. And now you're at a crossroads." He slid a folder across the table. "That contains a very generous offer, $3 million, a glowing recommendation letter, a confidentiality agreement." Lena didn't touch the folder. "You're trying to buy my silence. I'm offering you a future. Take the money, walk away, start over somewhere else, or stay here and watch everything you've built crumble when people learn the truth about you." "What truth?" Gregory pulled out his phone and turned it so she could see the screen. Photos of her and Ethan, leaving his apartment, working late in his office, sitting close in meetings. All perfectly innocent moments twisted to look like something else. "Sleeping your way to the top is such a cliché," Gregory said, "but it's effective. People believe what they want to believe. And right now, there are a lot of people who want to believe you're just another ambitious girl who used her assets to get ahead." Lena felt rage burning through her fear. "That's a lie." "Doesn't matter. By the time we're done, your name will be synonymous with scandal. You'll never work in this industry again. Ethan's reputation will be destroyed too, but he's rich enough to survive it. You're not." "Why are you doing this?" "Because you've become a problem. You and Ethan both. This company needs stability, and you're creating chaos." Gregory leaned back. "Take the deal, Lena. Walk away while you still can." "And if I don't?" "Then I'll destroy you. Professionally, personally, completely. I've done it before. I'm very good at it." Lena stood. Her legs felt shaky but held. "I'm not taking your deal." Gregory's expression hardened. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe, but it's my mistake to make." She walked out before he could say anything else. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall and tried to catch her breath. The recording device was still running. She had everything. 30 minutes later, the board meeting started. Lena and Ethan entered together. The room went quiet. Gregory stood at the head of the table. "Before we begin, I'd like to address some concerning rumors that have been circulating. Specifically, rumors about Mr. Vale's relationship with Miss Hart and the appropriateness of her rapid advancement within this company." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. "If you have accusations to make, Gregory, make them directly." "Very well." Gregory displayed the photos on the conference room screen. "These were taken over the past 3 weeks. They show a pattern of behavior that raises serious questions about judgment and professionalism." The room erupted in whispers. Lena felt every eye on her. "Those photos don't show anything inappropriate," Ethan said. "They show favoritism, special treatment. A CEO, spending unusual amounts of time alone with a subordinate who has no qualifications for her current position." Gregory turned to the board. "I move that we launch a formal investigation into potential ethics violations." "I second," one of Gregory's allies said immediately. Lena stood. Her voice didn't shake. "Before you vote, there's something you should hear." She pulled out her phone and played the recording. Gregory's voice filled the room, offering her money to disappear, threatening to destroy her if she didn't, admitting to past attacks on people who'd challenged him. The room went silent. Gregory's face turned red. "That recording was made without my consent. Single-party consent state," Agent Chen said from the doorway. She walked in with Agent Torres, both showing badges, which makes it perfectly legal and very interesting from an obstruction of justice perspective. "What is this?" Gregory demanded. "Federal investigation into corporate fraud and witness tampering." Agent Chen looked at the board. "We've been building a case for 6 months. Miss Hart's cooperation has been invaluable. as has the evidence she's gathered on financial irregularities involving multiple members of this board. Gregory tried to leave. Agent Torres blocked the door. Mr. Nash, we'd like you to come with us. We have questions about your financial arrangements with the company and several transactions that appear to violate securities laws. I want my lawyer. That's your right. We'll arrange for you to call them from our office. They escorted Gregory out. The board sat in stunned silence. Ethan finally spoke. I think we need to recess and discuss next steps. But first, I want to make something clear. Lena Hart is the reason this company still exists. She saw corruption when no one else would look. She risked everything to expose it. And anyone who questions her integrity or her right to be in this room can direct those questions to me personally. The meeting dissolved. Board members left in small groups, whispering furiously. Lena sat alone at the table until Ethan came back. You recorded him, Ethan said. The FBI gave me the device. I wore it this morning thinking maybe he'd slip up. I didn't expect him to hand me everything. You could have been hurt if he'd found the wire. But he didn't, and now he's done. Lena looked at Ethan. We won. Did we? Gregory's gone, Chen's gone. But look at what's left. A company in chaos. A board that doesn't trust anyone. Employees scared for their jobs. So we rebuild. That's what you said. Clean house and start over. Ethan sat down beside her. I'm tired, Lena. Tired of fighting, tired of wondering who's lying, tired of choosing between bad options and worse ones. Then rest. Take a day. See your daughter. Remember why you're doing this. She stood. But don't quit. Not now. Not when we're finally winning. She left him sitting there and went back to her office. The view from her window showed the city stretching out in every direction. Millions of people living their lives, most of them unaware that 30 floors up, a battle had just been won. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You made powerful enemies today. Watch your back. Lena deleted it and got back to work. There was still so much to do. The victory lasted exactly 48 hours before it started falling apart. Wednesday morning, Lena arrived at work to find security had been doubled at every entrance. Tommy, the guard who'd always waved her through with a smile, now checked her badge 3 times and made her sign in on paper, even though the digital system had already logged her. New protocols, he said apologetically. Orders from upstairs. Upstairs meant the interim board leadership, a committee of 3 external directors who'd been brought in to stabilize the company while the investigation continued. Lena had met them once. They'd looked at her like she was a liability they hadn't figured out how to minimize yet. Her office had been searched again. Professional this time, everything put back exactly where it belonged, but she could tell. A pen moved half an inch, papers restacked in slightly different order. Someone had gone through her files with care and precision. She called Ethan. His assistant answered. Mr. Vale is unavailable, Patricia said, her voice strained. He's in meetings all day. I can take a message. Tell him I need to talk to him. Now. I'll pass that along. The line went dead. Lena stared at her phone and felt the first real spike of fear since Gregory's arrest. Something had shifted. At 10 a.m., she was summoned to the executive conference room. Not by Ethan, by the interim board. 3 people sat at the table. Harrison Wells, former CEO of a pharmaceutical company, silver-haired and stone-faced. Janet Ortiz, corporate attorney with a reputation for cutting through chaos with surgical precision. And Thomas Brennan, CFO of a tech conglomerate, young for his position, ambitious, and apparently unimpressed by everything he'd seen so far. Miss Hart, Harrison said, thank you for joining us. Did I have a choice? Everyone has choices. He gestured to a chair. Please sit. We have concerns we'd like to discuss. Lena sat. Janet slid a folder across the table. Inside were printouts of emails, financial records, and what looked like surveillance logs. We've been conducting our own internal review, Janet said, separate from the FBI investigation. We need to understand not just what happened with Chen and Nash, but how it happened. Why systems failed, why oversight was inadequate. That sounds reasonable, Lena said carefully. Part of that review involves examining everyone who had access to sensitive information during the period when fraud was occurring. Thomas leaned forward. Including you. I'm the one who exposed the fraud. Yes, after being rapidly promoted to a position that gave you access to confidential documents and executive communications. Harrison opened another folder. Your employment history shows 14 months as a low-level assistant. Then suddenly you're director of strategic oversight reporting directly to the CEO. That's unusual. Mr. Vale promoted me because I identified problems other people missed, or because you were already aware of those problems through other means. Janet's voice was sharp. Your father worked with Robert Chen. He was under investigation for financial crimes when he died. Chen kept his company active and used it as part of his fraud network. That's quite a coincidence. Lena's hands clenched under the table. My father died 14 years ago. I didn't even know about his connection to Chen until recently. So you say. But we have to consider all possibilities. Thomas pulled up a document on the screen. Your financial records show you've been struggling. Medical bills for your mother, student loans, rent on an apartment you can barely afford. Then suddenly you're getting promoted, receiving bonuses, gaining access to information worth millions to the right buyer. Are you accusing me of something? We're trying to understand the full picture. Harrison's tone was almost gentle. Help us understand, Miss Hart. How does an assistant with no relevant credentials or experience suddenly become the person who cracks open a multi-million-dollar fraud scheme? Either you're extraordinarily talented, or you had prior knowledge that you leveraged for personal gain. Lena stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. I had a journal. Mr. Vale read it. He saw that I'd noticed inconsistencies in the Meridian merger documents. He brought me into the investigation because I saw things clearly, without the political complications that come with years in corporate America. That's it. That's the whole story. The journal that conveniently went missing and ended up on Mr. Vale's desk, Janet said. How did that happen exactly? I don't know. Someone took it from the break room. Someone who wanted Mr. Vale to see what I'd written. Someone? But you don't know who. Thomas made a note. Convenient. Where is Mr. Vale? Lena demanded. Why isn't he in this meeting? The three board members exchanged looks. Harrison spoke. Mr. Vale has been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of our investigation. The floor dropped out from under Lena's feet. What? There are questions about his judgment, his decision-making during this crisis, his relationship with you. Janet's expression was unreadable. Until we can verify that everything was handled appropriately, he's been asked to step back from day-to-day operations. This is insane. He saved this company. Or he created a crisis to consolidate power and eliminate rivals. Thomas shrugged. We're exploring all theories. Lena wanted to scream. Instead, she forced her voice to stay level. Can I go? One more thing. Harrison pulled out another document. We're going to need you to take a leave of absence as well. Paid, of course. While we complete our review. You're suspending me. We're protecting the integrity of the investigation. If you're innocent, this will be resolved quickly, and you'll be reinstated with our apologies. Janet stood. In the meantime, we'll need your badge, your laptop, and your access credentials. And if I refuse, then we'll terminate your employment immediately and make our suspicions public. Harrison's voice hardened. We're trying to be fair here, Miss Hart. Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. Lena handed over her badge and laptop with hands that wanted to shake but didn't. She walked out of that conference room with her head up and her spine straight, and she didn't let herself fall apart until she was in the stairwell 3 floors down, sitting on cold concrete steps with her face in her hands. They were erasing her, systematically, professionally, completely. Everything she'd built, everything she'd fought for, being dismantled under the guise of due diligence and proper procedure. Her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. Coffee shop on Madison. 1 hour. Come alone. Margaret Fisk. Lena almost didn't go. She was tired of secret meetings and cryptic messages and feeling like a pawn in games she only half understood. But she went anyway, because what else was she going to do? Go home and watch her life collapse in real time? Margaret was already there, sitting in the back corner with 2 cups of coffee. She looked like she'd aged 5 years in 2 weeks. Thank you for coming, Margaret said as Lena sat down. They suspended me. And Ethan. I know. I'm sorry. Did you know they were going to do this? I suspected. The interim board, they're not here to find truth. They're here to contain damage and protect the company's reputation. That means finding scapegoats. Margaret pushed one of the coffees toward Lena. You and Ethan are convenient targets, outsider and insider who both benefited from the chaos. It's a clean narrative. It's a lie. Truth and narrative aren't the same thing. You're learning that the hard way. Margaret pulled out her phone. I'm leaving the company. Resignation effective Friday. But before I go, I wanted to give you something. She showed Lena her screen. Emails, dozens of them. Communication between the interim board members and executives at other companies. Plans for restructuring. Conversations about selling off divisions. Discussions about bringing in new leadership. They're not trying to save the company, Margaret said quietly. They're trying to position it for acquisition. Break it into pieces and sell it to the highest bidders. Gregory might be gone, but his vision is alive and well. Can you send me these? Already did. Check your personal email. Margaret finished her coffee. I can't be part of this anymore. I thought I was protecting my family by making compromises, but all I did was help build a machine that devours people. You tried to stop it. That's more than most of us can say. I failed. Not yet, you haven't. Margaret stood. The FBI is still investigating. Agent Chen called me yesterday. They're building a RICO case. Racketeering, conspiracy, wire fraud. It's going to take months, but they're not giving up. Neither should you. After Margaret left, Lena sat alone in the coffee shop and read through the emails on her phone. Margaret was right. The interim board was systematically dismantling everything Ethan's father had built. In 6 months, the company would be unrecognizable. In a year, it might not exist at all. She called Agent Chen. Miss Hart, I was just about to call you. They suspended me. Put Ethan on leave. They're trying to bury everything. I know. We've been monitoring the situation. Agent Chen's voice was calm. This is actually good for our case. The more they try to cover up, the more evidence they create of obstruction. How is this good? They're winning. They think they're winning. There's a difference. Papers rustled on Chen's end. We've got warrants for financial records going back 10 years. We're tracking money through 3 countries and at least 15 shell companies. Gregory's been cooperating, trying to cut a deal. He's giving us names. What about Ethan and me? What about you? Are we targets? Agent Chen was quiet for a moment. Officially? You're witnesses. Unofficially? Some people in the Bureau think you knew more than you're saying, that maybe you orchestrated this whole thing to take down rivals and position yourself for a payout. Lena felt sick. That's insane. Is it? You went from assistant to director in record time. You exposed fraud that just happened to eliminate your boss's enemies. You're the one who conveniently found evidence at every critical moment. Chen paused. I don't believe that narrative, but I'm not the only one working this case. So what do I do? Keep your head down. Document everything. And trust that the truth will come out eventually. It usually does. That night, Lena sat with her mother and told her everything. The suspension, the accusations, the systematic destruction of everything she'd tried to build. Her mother listened without interrupting. When Lena finally ran out of words, her mother took her hand. Your father once told me that powerful people will always protect themselves, her mother said. They'll sacrifice anyone to maintain their positions. He was right about that. But he also said that eventually the weight of lies becomes too much to carry. Something always breaks. What if it breaks too late? What if they've already won by the time the truth comes out? Then you'll know you fought anyway. That's worth something. Lena wanted to believe that. But sitting in her tiny apartment, suspended from a job she'd fought so hard for, watching her name get dragged through speculation and insinuation, it was hard to see the value in losing with honor. Her phone rang. Ethan. Finally. Where have you been? Lena answered. Locked out of my own company. They confiscated everything. Phone, laptop, files. I'm calling from a burner. His voice was tight. Did they suspend you too? This morning, told me I'm under investigation for potential fraud and conspiracy. Jesus. I'm sorry. This is my fault. Stop. This isn't about fault. This is about them protecting themselves. Lena pulled up Margaret's emails on her laptop. I've got something you need to see. She walked him through the interim board's plans, the acquisition talks, the systematic dismantling of his father's legacy. Ethan was silent for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was different, harder. "Where are you right now?" "Home." "Why?" "Stay there." "I'm coming over." He arrived 40 minutes later wearing jeans and a jacket Lena had never seen, looking more tired than she'd ever seen him look. He sat at her kitchen table, the same table where her father had once spread out his work and taught her to see patterns, and put his head in his hands. "I've lost," he said. "They outmaneuvered me, used my own moves against me. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. We can still fight this." "With what?" "They've frozen my assets pending investigation. I can't access company accounts. Half my contacts won't return my calls because they don't want to be associated with scandal." He looked up at her. "I have maybe 3 months of liquid cash before I'm broke. No company, no income, no leverage. They took everything. You have your daughter, your father's name, the truth. My daughter doesn't understand why Daddy can't go to work anymore. My father's name is being dragged through mud by people claiming he built this company on fraud. And the truth is apparently negotiable depending on who's telling the story." Ethan's laugh was bitter. "I should have taken the exit package when Gregory offered it. Should have walked away rich and intact." "You don't believe that." "Don't I? Look where fighting got us. You're suspended. I'm ruined. The company's being sold off in pieces. What exactly did we accomplish?" Lena felt anger rising. "We exposed corruption. We stopped a fraud scheme. We tried to do the right thing. And we failed. Congratulations on our moral victory while we watch everything burn. So what, you're just giving up?" "I'm being realistic. There's a difference." Ethan stood. "Go back to school. Finish your degree. Get a job somewhere else. Forget you were ever part of this mess. You're young enough to start over." "What about you?" "I'll figure something out. I always do." He moved toward the door. "Sorry I dragged you into this. You deserve better." "Ethan, wait." But he was already gone, leaving Lena alone in her apartment with Margaret's emails and a growing certainty that if she didn't do something drastic, everything they'd fought for would be erased like it never happened. She pulled out her laptop and started writing. Not in her journal this time. A document, clear, detailed, thorough. Everything she knew about the fraud, the cover-up, the interim board's plans. Names, dates, amounts, connections. She wrote for 6 hours straight, fueled by coffee and rage and the stubborn refusal to let them win without a fight. At 3 a.m., she finished 47 pages. Every piece of evidence, every conversation, every suspicion backed up with documentation. She saved it in 3 different places, then sent copies to people she trusted. James Porter, Agent Chen. A journalist she'd met once who'd promised to listen if she ever had something worth saying. Then she called the number on the card Margaret had given her. It rang 4 times before a sleepy voice answered. "This is Lena Hart. I'm ready to talk. On the record. Everything." The interview was scheduled for Friday at a news outlet that had been investigating corporate fraud for decades. Lena spent Thursday preparing, going over her notes, making sure every claim could be supported. Agent Chen called to warn her that going public could complicate the federal case. "I don't care," Lena said. "If I wait for the legal system to work, the company will be gone, and everyone involved will have moved on to their next scam. At least this way, people know the truth. Just be careful. These people will come after you. They're already coming after me. What else can they take?" The interview was conducted by Diane Martinez, an investigative reporter who'd spent 20 years exposing corporate malfeasance. She listened to Lena's story without interrupting, taking notes, occasionally asking for clarification. "This is explosive," Diane said when Lena finished. "You understand that the moment this goes public, you'll be unemployable in this industry? They'll blacklist you, destroy your reputation, make sure you never work in finance again." "I understand. And you're willing to accept that?" Lena thought about her father, about the choices he'd faced, about dying with secrets that had eaten him alive. "I'd rather be unemployable and honest than successful and complicit." The article went live Monday morning. By noon, it had been shared 10,000 times. By evening, every major news outlet was running follow-up stories. The stock price dropped 15%. The interim board called an emergency meeting, and Lena's phone started ringing with death threats. She'd expected backlash, She hadn't expected the volume or the viciousness. People calling her a liar, a fraud, a whore who'd slept her way into a story. Her address got posted online. Someone sent photos of her apartment building with threatening messages. The police assigned a patrol car to her street. Her mother was terrified. Maybe you should leave town for a while. Stay with your aunt in Boston. I'm not running. This isn't bravery, it's stubbornness. There's a difference. Maybe, but I'm not hiding while they try to bury the truth. Wednesday morning, Lena got a call from an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Miss Hart? A woman's voice, vaguely familiar. This is Linda Kramer. We need to talk. They met in the same parking garage where Linda had first given Lena the flash drive. Linda looked worse than before, exhausted, scared, but determined. I read your interview, Linda said. It's going viral. The board is panicking. They're trying to contain it, but it's too late. The shareholders are demanding answers. Good. I have more information, things I didn't include in the files I gave you before. Linda handed over another flash drive. Audio recordings. Board meetings from the last 6 months. I've been recording everything since Gregory was arrested, just in case. Why are you giving this to me? Because you're the only one still fighting. Ethan's disappeared, Margaret quit. Everyone else is trying to save themselves. Linda met her eyes. I have cancer, stage 3. Probably won't see next year. I don't care about my career anymore or my reputation. I care about leaving my kids something to be proud of. This is it. This is my chance to do something that matters. Lena took the flash drive with hands that weren't quite steady. Thank you. Don't thank me. Use it. Burn them down. The recordings were damning. Conversations about covering up the fraud. Discussions about how to discredit Lena and Ethan. Plans to quietly settle with the FBI while maintaining public innocence. Harrison Wells' voice. We sacrificed 2 people to save the institution. That's the play. Make Hart and Vale the villains, restructure quietly, move on. Lena sent the recordings to Agent Chen, to Diane Martinez, to every journalist who'd contacted her asking for more information. She posted transcripts on social media. She made sure there was no way to bury this anymore. Thursday morning, the FBI arrested Harrison Wells and Janet Ortiz on charges of obstruction of justice and conspiracy. Thomas Brennan resigned and fled to his house in the Hamptons. The interim board collapsed, and Ethan called. I saw what you did, he said. I couldn't let them win. You could have. You could have walked away, started over, saved yourself. His voice was rough. Why didn't you? Because someone had to finish it, and you gave up. I was tired. I am tired. But watching you fight alone while I hid, I can't live with that. Papers rustled on his end. I'm coming back. To the company, to the fight, to whatever comes next. I should have never left. The company might not exist anymore. Then we'll build something new, something better, together. He paused. If you'll still have me. Lena looked around her tiny apartment, at the threats piled up on her table, at her mother asleep in the next room, exhausted from another difficult day, at the city outside her window, vast and indifferent and full of people who would never know her name or care about her fight. We finished this, she said. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. The following week moved like an avalanche, more arrests, more resignations. The company's remaining leadership voted to bring Ethan back as CEO with a reform board and new oversight structures. The acquisition talks collapsed. The FBI's RICO case expanded to include 16 defendants. And through it all, Lena worked. Not from an office anymore, her position was still technically suspended, but from her apartment, from coffee shops, from anywhere she could spread out her laptop and keep digging. She found more evidence, more connections, a network that went deeper and wider than anyone had suspected. Corporate fraud at 3 other companies, bribes to foreign officials, tax evasion schemes that spanned decades. Agent Chen called it the biggest white-collar crime case in 20 years. Lena called it unfinished. Because there was still one name that kept appearing in documents, always in the background, never quite directly implicated. A lawyer who'd structured many of the shell companies. A consultant who'd advised on the fraud schemes. Someone who'd been there from the beginning, helping build the network that had destroyed her father and nearly destroyed everything else. Vincent Morrison, corporate attorney, Gregory Nash's longtime friend and advisor. And the man who, according to documents Lena had found, had been the one to report her father to federal investigators 15 years ago. Not Chen, Morrison. Chen had taken credit, but Morrison had made the call. Lena sat in her apartment at 2 a.m., staring at evidence that proved Morrison had orchestrated her father's destruction to protect his own involvement in early fraud schemes. He'd used Chen as a front, let him take the blame and the credit, while Morrison continued operating in shadows. And he was still out there, untouched, protected by layers of legal complexity and plausible deniability. She called James Porter. "I need you to find someone," she said, "and I need everything you can dig up on him. Everything." "Who?" "Vincent Morrison. And James? I don't care if it's legal. I need the truth." James was quiet for a moment. "You sure about this?" "I've never been more sure of anything." "Then let's finish it." James called back 3 days later with a file so thick it took 20 minutes just to summarize. Vincent Morrison wasn't just a corporate attorney, he was an architect. For 30 years, he'd been building legal structures that allowed wealthy people to hide money, avoid taxes, and commit fraud with just enough distance to claim ignorance when things went wrong. "He's untouchable," James said over coffee in a diner far from anywhere either of them usually went. "Or at least he thinks he is. Offshore accounts in 12 countries. Clients who'd go to prison before they'd testify against him. A legal team that makes the mafia's lawyers look like public defenders." "There has to be something," Lena said. "There is, but it's messy." James slid a folder across the table. "Morrison kept records. Not because he had to, but because he's arrogant. He documented every scheme, every structure, every client, called it insurance. If anyone ever came after him, he could threaten to expose everyone." "Where are these records?" "That's the problem. They're in a safe deposit box at a bank in Switzerland. Completely legal, completely inaccessible without Morrison's physical presence and biometric verification." Lena felt hope deflating. "So we can't get to them." "I didn't say that." James leaned forward. "Morrison has a daughter, Emily Morrison. She's 32, works in nonprofit development, lives in Brooklyn. By all accounts, she's nothing like her father, actually tries to do good in the world." "What does she have to do with this?" "Everything. According to sources I can't name, Emily found out about her father's work 6 months ago. She's been estranged from him ever since. And she's been quietly gathering her own evidence, trying to figure out how to stop him without destroying her mother, who's sick and doesn't know the truth about what her husband does." Lena sat back. "You want me to approach her? I want you to talk to someone who might understand what you're going through. Someone else whose father wasn't who she thought he was." James finished his coffee. "Emily Morrison is speaking at a fundraiser tomorrow night, children's literacy program. If you happen to be there, you might find an opportunity for conversation." The fundraiser was in a converted warehouse in Brooklyn, the kind of space that tried very hard to look casual while costing a fortune to rent. Lena wore one of the blazers from her shopping trip months ago, the one that still felt like a costume, and moved through the crowd trying to look like she belonged. Emily Morrison was easy to spot. She had her father's height, but none of his predatory sharpness. She spoke to donors with genuine warmth, talked about literacy rates in underserved communities with actual passion, and looked exhausted in the way people do when they care too much about problems too big to fix alone. Lena waited until Emily stepped outside for air, then followed. "Emily Morrison?" Lena said. Emily turned, wary. "Do I know you?" "No, but I know your father, or at least I know what he's done." Emily's expression closed down. "I don't know what you're talking about. My name is Lena Hart. My father was Michael Hart. Your father destroyed him 15 years ago to protect a fraud scheme. I'm trying to stop him from destroying anyone else." Emily stared at her for a long moment. "You're the one from the news, the whistleblower." "That's one word for it. Come with me." They walked 3 blocks to a coffee shop that was still open despite the late hour. Emily ordered tea with shaking hands and sat across from Lena in a corner booth. "I found out 6 months ago," Emily said without preamble. "I was helping my mother organize his home office while he was traveling. Found documents, letters, evidence of things I couldn't believe. I confronted him. He didn't even deny it, just said I was naive if I thought successful people didn't bend rules." "I'm sorry." "Are you?" "Because you're here asking me to help you destroy him. That's not sorry. That's strategic. Lena didn't flinch. You're right. I need your help. But I also think you want to stop him. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been gathering evidence. Emily's eyes filled with tears she didn't let fall. He's my father. My mother loves him. My whole childhood. He was the person who taught me right from wrong. How do I reconcile that with what I know now? You don't. You just decide what matters more, the person you thought he was or the person he actually is. That's easy for you to say. Your father's dead. You can remember him however you want. My father died knowing he'd compromised everything he believed in because your father and people like him gave him no choice. I'd rather have the truth than a comfortable lie. Lena pulled out her phone, showed Emily the evidence she'd compiled. Your father orchestrated fraud schemes that stole from pension funds. Thousands of people lost their retirement because of structures he built. He helped corrupt executives hide assets while employees got laid off. He destroyed my father to cover his tracks. And he's still out there, still doing it, still untouchable. Emily read through the documents, her face getting paler. Where did you get all this? Investigators, FBI, some of it from your father's own clients who are cooperating to reduce their sentences. Lena leaned forward. I know about the safe deposit box in Switzerland. I know you have access because your father added you as an authorized user when you were 21, before you knew what he was. I can't just steal his records. You wouldn't be stealing. You'd be providing evidence of ongoing criminal activity to federal authorities. That's not theft. That's justice. It's also betraying my father. He betrayed you first. He betrayed everyone who trusted him. Lena's voice softened. I'm not asking you to do this for me. I'm asking you to do it for all the people he's hurt, for the people he'll hurt next if someone doesn't stop him. Emily wiped her eyes. My mother has Alzheimer's. Early stages, but progressing. She doesn't understand why I don't visit anymore. I can't tell her the truth because it would destroy her. And if I do this, if I help you, my father will know it was me. He'll cut me off completely. I'll lose both parents. I know, and I know that's not fair. Nothing about this is fair. Lena pulled out a card Agent Chen had given her. But this is the number of the FBI agent handling the case. If you decide you can help, call her. If you can't, I understand. Either way, I'm sorry you have to carry this. Lena left the card on the table and walked out before Emily could respond. She'd done what she could. The rest was up to someone else fighting their own impossible battle. 2 days passed. Lena heard nothing. She tried to focus on other things, helping Ethan prepare for his official return as CEO, working with the reformed board on new ethics policies, testifying in depositions for the ongoing federal cases. But her mind kept returning to Emily Morrison and the question of whether anyone would choose truth over family. Then Agent Chen called. We need to meet, now. They met at the FBI field office, in a conference room that smelled like burnt coffee and old stress. Agent Chen had dark circles under her eyes, and the manic energy of someone running on deadline pressure and stubborn determination. Emily Morrison contacted me, Chen said without preamble. She's willing to provide access to her father's records, but she has conditions. What conditions? Immunity for her mother. If the records show her mother knew anything, Emily wants guaranteed protection from prosecution. Chen pulled up a document on her laptop. Also, she wants witness protection for herself and her mother. New identities, relocation, the full program. Can you give her that? If the records are as good as she claims, yes. But here's the catch. She won't hand them over until she has the agreement in writing, and she wants you there when she does it. Why me? Because she trusts you. Or at least, she trusts that you understand what she's sacrificing. Chen closed her laptop. We're flying to Zurich tomorrow. You, me, and Emily Morrison. We retrieve the records, verify their contents, and if they're legitimate, we execute the immunity agreement and bring Emily and her mother into protection. What about Vincent Morrison? The moment we have verified evidence, we arrest him. Multiple jurisdictions, multiple charges. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison. Chen met Lena's eyes. This is it. The final piece. After this, it's over. The flight to Zurich was quiet. Emily sat by the window, staring out at clouds, barely speaking. Lena gave her space. Some battles had to be fought alone, even when you were surrounded by people. The bank was old European money, marble floors, hushed voices, security that looked polite but deadly serious. Emily showed her identification, submitted to biometric scans, signed documents with a hand that shook slightly. The safe deposit box was larger than Lena expected. Inside were USB drives, physical files, photographs, recordings. Decades of evidence organized with the kind of meticulous care that made her skin crawl. Morrison had documented everything because he never thought anyone would have the access or courage to use it against him. He'd been wrong. Agent Chen verified the contents on a secure laptop. Her expression went from focused to shocked to something close to awe. This is everything. Bank accounts, client lists, structural documents, communications. We can prosecute 50 people with this, maybe more. Then do it, Emily said. Her voice was hollow. Do it before I change my mind. They flew back to New York that night. Emily and her mother were in witness protection by morning. Vincent Morrison was arrested at his office at noon, surrounded by junior partners and assistants who'd had no idea what their boss actually did in his private practice. Lena watched the arrest on the news from Ethan's office. He'd been officially reinstated as CEO that morning, and his office had been restored to exactly how it had been before the chaos started. Same desk, same photo of Sophie, same view of a city that had nearly swallowed them both. It's done, Ethan said, standing beside her. Is it? Morrison's arrested, but he's got lawyers who'll fight this for years. Chen and Nash will cooperate to reduce their sentences. Most of the board members who were involved will settle quietly. And the company, she gestured at the window. The company survives, but does it change? We make it change. That's what the new structure is for. Ethan pulled up documents on his computer. New board composition, outside oversight, ethics committee with real power, whistleblower protections. Everything we should have had from the beginning. And you think that's enough? I think it's a start. I think my father would have wanted us to try. He looked at her. And I think we need someone to run it. Someone who understands what happens when systems fail. Someone who's proven they'll fight for what's right, even when it costs them everything. Lena knew where this was going. Ethan, Chief Ethics Officer, new position, board oversight, investigative authority, direct reporting line to both the CEO and the external board. You'd have power to shut down anything that doesn't pass scrutiny. I don't have the credentials. You have something better. You have the credibility of someone who risked everything to do the right thing. You have instincts that found fraud our entire executive team missed. And you have my trust. That's worth more than any MBA. Lena thought about it. About her tiny apartment and her mother's medical bills, and the student loans she was still paying. About the threats she still received in the job market that had blacklisted her name. About starting over somewhere else. Building a different life. Trying to forget this ever happened. But she also thought about her father. About dying with secrets. About all the people who'd been hurt by the fraud, and all the people who might be hurt by the next scheme if someone wasn't watching. Okay, she said. But I want full investigative authority. Any department, any executive, any deal. If I see something wrong, I can stop it. Done. And I want protection for whistleblowers. Real protection. Anyone who comes forward with concerns gets the same support I got, or should have gotten. Already in the new policies. And I want a salary that means I can take care of my mother without choosing between medical bills and groceries. Ethan actually smiled. I think we can manage that. They shook hands, and Lena felt something shift. Not victory, exactly. The cost had been too high for victory. But maybe resolution. Maybe the sense that she'd finished something her father had started without knowing it. The official announcement came the following week. The press coverage was mixed. Some outlets celebrated the company's commitment to reform. Others questioned whether promoting a whistleblower was genuine change or just good PR. Lena didn't care. She had work to do. Her first act as Chief Ethics Officer was to establish a confidential reporting system. Her second was to audit every major deal from the past 5 years. Her third was to fire 3 executives who'd been quietly involved in Chen's schemes, but had managed to avoid prosecution by cooperating early. The company didn't like it. Change never came easy. But they learned quickly that Lena Hart wasn't the invisible assistant anymore. She was someone who asked uncomfortable questions and didn't accept comfortable lies. 3 months after taking the position, Lena was working late when her mother called. "Turn on the news," her mother said. Lena pulled up a news stream on her computer. The headline made her breath catch. Federal prosecutors announce guilty verdicts in landmark corporate fraud case. She read the article 3 times. Gregory Nash, guilty on 14 counts. Robert Chen, guilty on 11 counts. Vincent Morrison, guilty on 23 counts, including racketeering, conspiracy, and fraud. Combined sentences totaling over 100 years. Her phone rang. Agent Chen. I wanted you to hear it from me first, Chen said. We got them, all of them. The jury deliberated for 6 days but came back unanimous on almost everything. What about the others? The executives who cooperated. Reduce sentences. Some will serve time, some won't. But they're all out of the industry. Banned from holding corporate positions. Their careers are over. And the money? The pensions? Restitution orders for victims. It'll take years to sort out, but people will get some of what they lost. Not all of it. Never all of it. But something. After the call ended, Lena sat in her office and cried. Not from happiness exactly. The victory was too complicated for happiness. Too many people had been hurt. Too much had been lost. Her father was still dead. Thousands of people had still lost their retirement savings. The damage couldn't be undone, but at least it had been acknowledged. At least someone had been held accountable. At least the pattern had been broken, even if just for a moment. She called her mother. Did you see? Lena asked. I saw. Your father would be so proud. I'm not sure about that. I think he'd be sad it came to this. Maybe, but he'd also be proud you finished what he couldn't. That counts for something. That night, Lena went home to her apartment, still small, still cramped, but paid for now by a salary that meant she didn't have to choose between food and heat. Her mother was asleep, breathing easier thanks to new medications they could finally afford. Lena pulled out her father's old journal, the leather one that had started all of this. She hadn't written in it since everything began. Now she opened to a blank page and wrote, "It's over," or at least this part is over. The verdicts came in today. Guilty across the board. I thought I'd feel victorious. Instead, I just feel tired. But maybe that's okay. Maybe the point isn't to feel good about winning. Maybe it's just to know you fought for something that mattered, even when the cost was high. I think you'd understand that, Dad. I hope you would. She closed the journal and put it on the shelf next to the box of her father's old files that her mother had saved. 2 pieces of the same story, separated by 15 years and a lifetime of choices. Her phone buzzed. Ethan. Dinner tomorrow? Sophie wants to meet the person I keep talking about. Lena smiled and typed back, I'd like that. The next evening, she met them at a restaurant that was nice without being pretentious. Sophie was exactly as Ethan had described. Dark curls, gap-toothed smile, and an absolute confidence that the world existed to answer her questions. You're the one who helped my dad save his company, Sophie announced before Lena had even sat down. I helped, but your dad did most of the work. That's not what he says. He says you're the bravest person he knows. Lena glanced at Ethan, who had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. Your dad exaggerates. Nah. Dad doesn't exaggerate. He says exaggerating is lying, and lying is for people who don't trust the truth. Smart dad, Lena said. Dinner was chaotic in the best way. Sophie talked about dinosaurs and her best friend's birthday party, and how she decided to be a paleontologist when she grew up, or maybe a chef, or possibly both. Ethan mostly let her talk, interjecting only when she needed help cutting her food, or when she asked him direct questions about work. Do you like working with my dad? Sophie asked Lena at one point. I do. He's a good boss. Are you guys going to get married? Ethan choked on his water. Lena felt her face go hot. Sophie, that's... What? Emily's parents worked together and they got married. So did David's parents. It's not weird. It's also not automatic, Ethan managed. Miss Hart and I are colleagues. We work together. But do you like each other? Lena and Ethan exchanged looks. After everything they'd been through together, this felt like the most dangerous conversation yet. Yes, Lena said carefully. We like each other. Good, because Dad needs more friends. He works too much. After dinner, Ethan walked Lena to the subway. Sophie had been picked up by her grandmother, leaving them alone on the street as evening turned to night. I'm sorry about that, Ethan said. She's 6. She doesn't have a filter yet. It's fine. She's wonderful. She is, and she's right, for what it's worth. I do work too much. I have been for years, using it as an excuse to avoid everything else. He stopped walking. But these past few months, working with you, fighting alongside you, it reminded me that there's more to life than board meetings and quarterly reports. Ethan, I'm not asking for anything. I know we've been through too much. I know the power dynamics are complicated. I know you probably just want to focus on your new position and taking care of your mother. He met her eyes. But I wanted you to know that you matter to me, not as an employee or a colleague, as a person I admire and trust and care about. Lena felt something complicated happening in her chest. This is a terrible idea. We work together. We've been through trauma together. We're probably confusing gratitude for something else. Probably, Ethan agreed. And even if we're not, starting something now would be messy and complicated, and everyone would say I only got my position because of personal involvement. They definitely say that. So we should be smart about this. Professional. Maintain appropriate boundaries. Absolutely. They stood there on the sidewalk, not moving. But maybe, Lena said slowly, after some time has passed, after things have settled, after we've proven to everyone, including ourselves, that this isn't just crisis bonding or whatever the psychological term is, maybe then, Ethan finished, we could see what this is, without the fraud and the investigations and the constant emergency situations. Maybe then. I can wait, Ethan said. I'm good at waiting. Lena smiled. So am I. Had to wait 14 months just to be seen as something other than invisible. You were never invisible. I was just too stupid to notice. She reached the subway entrance. Good night, Ethan. Good night, Lena. She descended into the station, and as the train carried her home through tunnels under the city, she thought about futures and possibilities and all the things that might happen now that the fighting was finally done. 6 months later, the company held its annual shareholder meeting. Lena stood on stage beside Ethan and the reformed board, presenting the new ethics framework and reporting on the progress they'd made. Transparency initiatives, whistleblower protections, independent audits, restitution to victims of the fraud. The shareholders applauded, some because they genuinely supported the changes, others because the stock price had recovered and they'd stopped caring how it happened. After the meeting, Lena found a quiet moment in her office. She pulled out her journal, the digital one now, safer, and wrote, "A year ago, I was invisible. An assistant nobody noticed, living paycheck to paycheck, carrying secrets I didn't know how to share. Now I'm standing on stages talking about ethics reform to people who used to look through me like I didn't exist. I'm not sure what the moral of this story is, that persistence pays off, that the truth always wins. Both feel too simple for how complicated everything actually was. Maybe the moral is just that sometimes you have to fight for what's right, even when you know it'll cost you everything. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you find people willing to fight alongside you. And sometimes, even more rarely, you actually win. Not cleanly, not perfectly, but enough. Enough to matter. Enough to make a difference. Enough to sleep at night knowing you didn't look away when it mattered most." Her phone buzzed. Ethan. "Dinner? No agenda, no work talk, just dinner." She typed back, "Just dinner sounds perfect." That evening, she met him at a different restaurant. Quieter. More intimate. The kind of place people went for conversations that mattered. 6 months, Ethan said after they'd ordered. That's how long we said we'd wait. Technically, I said after things settled. Things aren't really settled. Things are never settled. If we wait for perfect conditions, we'll wait forever. Lena smiled. Fair point. So I'm asking, not as your boss, not as the CEO, as someone who's seen you at your strongest and your weakest and finds you remarkable either way. He reached across the table. Would you like to see what this is? Without the crisis? Without the pressure? Just us, figuring it out together? Lena took his hand. Yes, I would. Even though people will talk? People already talk. They've been speculating about us since the beginning. At least this way it'll be true. They talked through dinner about everything except work. About Sophie's upcoming school play. About Lena's mother, who was responding well to new treatments. About the apartment Lena was looking at in a better neighborhood, close enough to her mother, but with enough space to breathe. about small things and future things and all the ordinary moments that had been impossible when they were fighting for survival. When Ethan walked her home, he stopped at her door. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. "You're the CEO. You probably shouldn't be asking permission." "I'm not the CEO right now. I'm just someone who really wants to kiss you, but wants to make sure it's actually what you want." Lena reached up and pulled him down to her level. "It's what I want." The kiss was soft and careful, and nothing like the dramatic reunion kisses in movies. It was tentative and slightly awkward and absolutely perfect because it was real. Because it was them, finally, without the weight of corporate fraud and federal investigations and life-or-death decisions. When they pulled apart, Ethan was smiling. "We're going to be terrible at this, aren't we?" "Probably. We're both workaholics with trust issues and complicated pasts." Lena grinned. "But we're also both stubborn enough to make it work anyway." "That's what I'm counting on." 3 years later, Lena stood in her office, much larger now, with windows that overlooked the city and a door that had her full title engraved on the nameplate, Chief Ethics Officer. The company had grown, restructured, and rebuilt its reputation. Not perfectly. Nothing was perfect, but better. Measurably, demonstrably better. Her mother's health had stabilized, not cured, Parkinson's didn't work that way, but managed well enough that she could still have good days more often than bad ones. The fraud cases had finally concluded. Chen and Nash and Morrison were all in prison. Restitution had been distributed to victims. The industry had implemented new regulations. It wasn't enough. It was never enough, but it was something. And Ethan was picking her up in 20 minutes for dinner with Sophie, who was 9 now, and had recently informed them both that if they were going to keep dating, they should probably just get married already because it was getting ridiculous. Lena's phone rang. An internal number she didn't recognize. "This is Lena Hart." "Miss Hart, this is David Chen. I work in accounting, junior analyst. I need to talk to someone about something I found in the quarterly reports, something that doesn't add up." Lena felt that familiar spike of attention, the pattern recognition kicking in. "Tell me what you found." David explained haltingly, nervously, clearly scared of being wrong or causing trouble, but the numbers he described did sound off. Small discrepancies. Nothing that would trigger automatic flags, but consistent, regular. The kind of thing someone might miss if they weren't looking carefully. "Send me everything you have," Lena said. "And David?" "You did the right thing calling. This is exactly what this office exists for." After hanging up, she sat for a moment with the weight of it. Here we go again. Another investigation, another fight, another chance to prove that the systems they'd built actually worked. But this time was different. This time she wasn't alone. This time she had authority and resources and a company that would support her instead of fighting her. This time she had people who would listen when she said something was wrong. This time she had backup. Ethan arrived exactly on time, Sophie bouncing beside him with the energy of someone who'd had too much sugar and not enough recess. "You ready?" Ethan asked. Lena looked at her office one more time. At the framed photo on her desk, her and her father, from when she was 8, both of them laughing over some shared joke she couldn't remember anymore. At the journal on her shelf, pages full now of different stories. At the view of a city that had tried to crush her and failed. "Ready?" she said. She took Ethan's hand, let Sophie grab the other one, and walked out into the evening. Behind her, David Chen's email pinged into her inbox, waiting to be investigated. Tomorrow's problem. Tomorrow's fight. Tomorrow's chance to prove that some things actually did change. That some victories actually mattered. That sometimes the people who were supposed to be invisible could reshape entire worlds. But tonight was for dinner and laughter, and the ordinary miracle of having people who loved you and work that mattered, and a future that felt like something worth building. Tonight was for being seen. Tonight was enough.